A very good morning and warm welcome to all those who've joined us for MitKat's APAC Risk Symposium 2023. It's an early morning and late night for some of you out there, and thank you to those who've taken out their time to be with us and for such an overwhelming response. A few housekeeping announcements before we begin. For those who need to leave in the middle or will not be able to attend till the end, need not worry and can see the discussions on our YouTube channel at their convenience. For those who are attending, and if you have any questions, I request you to please put them in the Q&A box and avoid the chat box as it tends to get lost. I would also request all our panelists and moderators to try and answer the questions during the seminar as well. Before we begin, I will quickly walk you through the agenda for the day. And the agenda for the day, we will start with a keynote address by Mr. Nitin A. Gokhale, who is an author, analyst, advisor, and founder at bharatshakti.in and stratnewsglobal.com. Followed by that, we will have a release of our Asia Risk Review 2023. With that, we will move on to our first panel discussion of the day, Geopolitical Trends and Travel Risk Management in the APAC region, which will be moderated by Colonel Sushil Pradhan. We then will have a demonstration of our AI-assisted Intel platform. With that, we come to the second panel discussion on new age threats to organizations, which will be moderated by Mr. Mitesh Shah. And coming to the third panel discussion on Technology Risk Outlook 2023, moderated by Mr. Pawan Desai. We will end with summing up and closing remarks by Ms. Aparna Gudar, who is the Associate Director at Predictive Risk Intelligence MitKat Advisory. We begin our seminar, as I mentioned, with a keynote address by Mr. Nitin Gokhale, who needs no introduction, but it is my pleasure to do so nonetheless. Mr. Gokhale is a media entrepreneur, strategic affairs analyst, and author of more than a dozen books on military history, insurgencies, and wars. One of South Asia's leading strategic analysts, he started his career in journalism in 1983. In the past 36 years, he has led teams of journalists across print, broadcast, and web platforms. A specialist in conflict coverage, he has lived and reported from India's Northeast for 23 years, been on the ground at Kargil in the summer of 1999, and also brought us live reports from Sri Lanka's Elam War between 2006 and 9. An alumni of the Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies in Hawaii, he now writes, lectures, and analyzes security and strategic matters in Indo-Pacific and travels regularly to China, Europe, South and Southeast Asia to take part in various seminars and conferences. He is a popular visiting faculty at India's Defense Service Staff College and the three war colleges, India's National Defense College, College of Defense Management, and the IB's Intelligence School. He now owns and runs two important portals, bharatshakti.in and stratnewsglobal.com. With this, sir, I now invite you to please deliver your keynote address.
Thank you very much, Shreya. Good morning and good evening, all the participants here, very renowned analysts and risk assessment professionals here. I'm privileged that MitKat has asked me to speak to all of you and share some of my thoughts. I can't call it the keynote address really, because all of you know what I'm going to speak about, or you actually have better knowledge than me on most of this. But I will try and sum up how I see the world today and in the next 12 months or so, which perhaps can set the ball rolling going forward. Thank you very much, Sam and Pawan and Sushil, for inviting me once again after a couple of years that we were together on a similar program. So let me begin straight away by looking forward. Before I look forward or look ahead, let me look back 3 years. Three strategic shocks in 2020, 2021, and 2022 actually defines the world of disorder that we live in today. So in 2020, we had the pandemic, which around this time was manifesting itself across the world, although it started in China in December 2019. So the COVID-19 name has stuck, and it has, of course, gone and affected the globe as never before. It is one of those black swan events that we have all lived through and survived, luckily. So that was one strategic shock. In 2021, mid-August, the American and NATO forces withdrawal from Afghanistan had its own ramifications and implications. which happened in, as I said, August 2021, which had a issue. I mean, all the issues were created for the region as in particular, and the world in general, really. The American withdrawal there after 20 years of trying to tame the Taliban, they finally gave in to the Taliban. And in 2022, this month, exactly a year ago, on 24th February, the Russia-Ukraine war started. Russia invaded Ukraine to begin with, and then the war has begun. That is the after effects and the shocks, the strategic shocks of that war are still being felt. We are living through it even today. And that is something that we have to be very cognizant of as we look ahead. That what is the after effect of that continuing war, even if not a war, as Putin would like to know, like to say, it's a special operations in Ukraine, but it's a war by a different name, whatever you say. So as a net result of these three strategic shocks, one after the other, the world is in real disarray in many ways, geostrategically, geoeconomically. And the changes, seismic changes that have occurred in Europe, Europe is now going through a churn, which it has never witnessed after Second World War. The stability it has had for over 60 years has been challenged, and they are sort of living through it. And it is having an effect on the world because Europe has been a major market. Europe has been a major part of the supply chain, and the pretty much the entire disruption in Europe because of the war is now shaking up the very foundations of the global stability, which was the hallmark of the past several decades. Now, what does that mean? It is bringing in unprecedented inflation, as we all know, in Europe as well as in the US. It has disrupted supply chains. It has disrupted the markets. It has also slowed down economies of most prosperous nations. And the energy prices in Europe are going to eat into the economic stability, as we all have experienced or have watched in the past 8 to 10 months, and which is likely to continue. I think there is a severe winter which is being faced by those who live in Europe, and also the high energy prices that are going through. So the supply chain disruption also affects China in many ways, because Europe is a major market for China, which is not getting the kind of orders that it wants. And of course, China has its own problems. Economically, as we now know from the IMF projections, India is the fastest growing economy this year too. And yesterday's budget brings in probably the prospects of better microeconomic stability in India, which means good news for Asia, at least, if not the entire globe. But China is slowing down. The Chinese economy is slowing down. It is showing no signs of picking up the pieces. It has sort of gone through the shattering of the economy, as well as the confidence in China is going to have a long-lasting effect, or longer effect than one imagines. Although I would say the Chinese, by suddenly lifting the zero COVID policy, have tried to limit the damage that they were inflicting on themselves. So it has slowed down, but it is not out yet. It is down, but not out yet. So the jury is still out on China as far as the picking up the economy, or the sort of reviving the economy is concerned. What does it mean for the world? I think overall the economic stability will be questioned even this year, because China is not playing its role, will not play its role. The US inflation is going to create problems for supply and manufacturing units, both in Europe, where the wages have also gone up, and the US. So again, the shifting of supply chains out of China, and even maybe out of Europe to Asia, is going to be a slowly picking up trend, as I see it. Asia, and we are talking about APAC here, the APAC region, will be in the spotlight for various reasons. India, of course, as I mentioned, is the lone bright spot in terms of economic stability, or the growth of GDP in India. But let's not rule out Japan or South Korea. And of course, in smaller ways, China picking up the pieces. So the spotlight will certainly return to Asia. The sensitivity is back to Asia. And therefore, the 2 points that I want to make before I sort of come to my conclusion, that the decoupling of US-China will have major effects on how the world progresses geoeconomically and geopolitically. And the thing for the managers, the risk managers or risk assessment managers to look out for are three things. I think executives need to manage political opportunities and risks. They should be aware of the geopolitical trends and geopolitical winds that keep changing, and the ebb and flow of geopolitics, which is happening. They will push up costs. The changing geopolitical scenario will push up costs for the companies and businesses, which they have to be very aware of before advising investments or before advising no investments in a country or a particular region. The biggest beneficiary of all this is going to be the aerospace and defense sector, which will be in greater demand. As I see, people from Europe have been coming to Asia looking for and hunting for weapons and platforms and ammunitions and munitions. Wherever they can pick up, they want it, because the Europeans see the Russia-Ukraine conflict as a sort of a longer term challenge to Europe, and therefore they are trying to pick up the pieces or pick up the munitions and ammunition from everywhere. India, as I said, is one of the swing states geopolitically, and as HSBC's Noel Queen said the other day, he says that the resilient supply chains and the supply chain readjustment that is happening in the world will benefit countries in Asia. That is, I think, Vietnam, South Korea, India, and Indonesia. So that needs to be kept in mind when all of you as managers, as people who watch this space much more closely, much more deliberately than us in the analysis field, will really know that the world is fraught with risk. But if you're on the ball, if you're constantly looking at the changing winds of geopolitical trends, then perhaps the decisions will be right. So I think all in all, this is a world disorder that we are living in. And what we need to watch out is how China recovers, if at all, how US sort of pushes back against China, and how India decouples from China. One of the worries in India is its continuing trade deficit with China and dependence on manufacturing, many of the manufacturing units on the Chinese supply chains. How does India decouple from there will be the question which will be consistently asked in 2023. And that will actually determine which way the world goes in the coming 12 months, if not in the longer term. I think I'm going to stop here. I hope I've been able to sort of make any sense, or I've been coherent, because I'm going to dip in and out of the conversations through the day, because very eminent and very knowledgeable people are going to speak in different sessions. But once again, thank you, MitKat. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Sushil, for giving me this opportunity. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, sir, for those fantastic insights and setting the stage for the discussions to follow. And we really appreciate you for making the time and coming and speaking and addressing the audience here today. Thank you so much. The Asia-Pacific region is emerging as the fulcrum of the new world order. And as rightly said, it is transforming the geopolitical landscape in addition to being a cauldron of economic growth. In this era of change in the region, along with opportunities, multifarious risks present themselves for businesses operating out of here. We are proud to release another benchmark tool acknowledged by the industry, the Asia Risk Review 2023. And to unveil this, I now invite my colleague, Mr. Athra Bhatt, team lead of the Asia Pacific section, Predictive Risk Intelligence team at MitKat Advisory. Athra, all yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Shreya. Just give me 1 second and I will share my screen. Right. A very good morning, good afternoon, or a good evening to all of our panelists, our attendees, and my colleagues. Now, I realize that we have people from all across the time zone. So thank you especially to those who are attending this across all of the various areas and countries that you are. My name is Atreya Bhatt, and I lead the Asia Pacific team at MitKat's Predictive Risk Intelligence Vertical. Welcome to MitKat APAC Risk Symposium 2023. As per many estimates, many theories, many analyses, this century has been dubbed as the Asian century. This has been based on the fact that regional powers such as India, China, South Korea, Japan, etc., all have important roles to play in driving global economics, regional geopolitics, as well as in shaping the world order for not just the decade, but for several decades to come. So what the Asia Pacific Risk Review does is that it is our attempt at understanding what is an extremely difficult and complicated region. It's a very heterogeneous region with various countries attempting to stamp their own authority over the region. And in the same way, it is also extremely important to understand the region because since the turn of the century, it has been a propeller of global economy and will continue to have that role to play in several years to come. So without further ado, it gives me great delight to unveil the MitKat Asia Risk Review 2023. Is my screen visible? Right, thank you. So the Asia Risk Review, like I said, is our attempt at understanding what is a very complicated region, but also something which is very important for businesses to understand, not just because of the economic significance it holds, but also its potential to influence geopolitics and the world order in the several decades to come. The Asia Risk Review 2023 begins with a summary by our chairman, which is an astute summary as well as a forecast for 2023. So our chairman, General Sudhir Sharma, has enlisted all of these. He summarized all of this in a very easy to understand manner, as well as a very astute forecast, followed by the Risk Rating 2023, which is a forecast for 2023 for all the countries across the South Asia and the Asia Pacific region across 5 different risk parameters, which includes internal security, political stability, economic stability, natural disasters, and infrastructure. The next is the top 10 risks for the Asia Pacific region. So the initial few slides of the Asia Risk Review 2023 gives you a brief understanding of the various risks, the various developments, the escalations, and the trends that need to be tracked through the course of 2023, as well as those that were witnessed in 2022. So it is somewhat of a summary. So, in case you want to just understand the snapshots of the escalations, the trends that need to be followed, you can go through the first few pages of the Asia Risk Review 2023, and it will give you, a good, concise understanding of what needs to be tracked. Apart from this, we also do track, each and every peculiar risk based on individual countries, which are across the South Asian and Asia Pacific region. Now, this is just a summarization of the risks that are prevalent across each of these countries, but we do, of course, do a deep dive into each one of these individual countries in the subsequent parts of the document. Now, in 2022, we witnessed the South Asian region beset by instability, which was caused by economic turmoil of varying proportions in countries such as Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan, Sri Lanka as well. Now, India, of course, did stabilize itself, at least in the next latter part of the year, through robust economic activity. But the economic turmoil did cascade into political instability and civil unrest. We also witnessed democratic secession in Afghanistan and Myanmar as the military junta and the Taliban consolidated control in their respective countries. Apart from that, speaking from a natural disasters and climate change perspective, we saw natural disasters and extreme weather events of intense proportions across the larger South Asia region. We saw an unprecedented heat wave in Pakistan and India. We saw devastating floods in Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, parts of northeastern India. We saw the earthquake in Afghanistan, and all of this was attributed to the La Nina weather phenomenon, which is, predicted to prolong deep into 2023 as well. So this will remain a very important issue for businesses in the region to contend with. Moving towards the Asia-Pacific region, as per our analysis, the larger geopolitical trends and the dynamics of the region will be decided by the developments across three main conflicts or disputes, starting from the China-Taiwan dispute, escalations across the Korean Peninsula, as well as littoral claims and maritime tensions in the South China Sea. 2022 saw Chinese Premier Xi Jinping win his third term as president, which he will be expected to consolidate his control over the Chinese bureaucracy and the CCP. And this may have ramifications for equations with India as well as in the larger Asia-Pacific region. India will be expected to play a very important role in deciding the trajectory of 2023, considering its presidency as presidency of G20. With an impending food crisis, impending energy crisis, global economic deceleration and contraction, India will be expected to play an important part in piloting how 2023 goes. Apart from this, countries such as Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, all of which saw an economic expansion in 2022 based on export-oriented markets, will possibly see an economic contraction in 2022, which may or may not be marginal. But the larger economics of the region of Asia-Pacific will be decided by regional partnerships such as the CPTPP, the RCEP, and the APEC. With this, why you should read the Asia Risk Review 2023 is because it has been summarized, it has been analyzed. We've not just deep dived into each and every single topic, but also given you a quick snapshot in case you want to get a concise understanding, a quick description of what the risks posed are.
So with this we unveil the Asia Risk Review, and it will be available on our website very soon. For those of you who would want to have access to this, please do contact Kunal, and he will be able to provide this to you. Thank you, and back to you, Shreya.
I have very eminent panelists here with me today, and I'm sure the audience is really looking forward to hearing from them. So very good morning and good afternoon and good evening to all of you here. And it's great to be moderating a panel of such eminent experts in the respective fields and in the world of security. So before I introduce my panelists, let me just quickly introduce myself. So I'm Sushil Pradhan. I am the Chief Operations Officer of MitKat. I've been with MitKat for 11 years. And before that, I spent 22 years in the Indian Army. So yes, I have a wide exposure of working across the world, whether it was with the UN peacekeeping missions in Africa or the United Nations Training Center in Germany, and various assignments which I took up after I joined MitKat, which included in Iraq, and I've traveled across mostly the Asia Pacific region. But yes, I've been speaking at various conferences across the world, whether it's at New York or Beijing or Shanghai or Dubai or Singapore. So I managed to get acquainted with a lot of people who are on this panel with me today. So welcome to all of you. And I'll just take a quick 2 to 3 minutes to introduce each panelist in no particular sequence. But let me start with Craig Foster. He's the head of real estate, safety and security, crisis management and resilience at Grab. He's got over 2 decades of experience, and before Grab, he was working with Barclays as a managing director in the chief security office leadership team that protects the bank's physical and logical assets, reputation and brand. He also worked with Standard Chartered Bank as the managing director and the global head of group security and safety. Before that, he was with Caterpillar as the regional security director, and he's also worked with Hill & Associates Limited as a senior executive VP. So you see that he's got a cross-sectoral experience and been in the industry for long. Hi, Craig, welcome, and just wave out to the crowd and then we'll get back to you.
Thank you. Good day.
Hi. We also have Matthew joining us from the UK, from Singapore. Matthew Lee is an experienced safety and security leader with demonstrated history of working in the semiconductor, energy, and technology industry. He's skilled in crisis and risk management, close protection, and regional security operations. Currently, he's the corporate security director for APJ and Greater China region at Dell Technologies. He was also with Technip FMC as the regional security and safety manager for APAC region, and Applied Materials as regional security manager Southeast Asia, and also worked with the Resorts World Sentosa as the assistant security manager. Hi, Matt. Great to have you here and look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, Sam. Hi, everyone.
Next, we have Bruce McIndoe. I think, again, very well known to the industry in security and risk. He's the president of McIndoe Risk Advisory, LLC. He's a recognized leader, author, and speaker in the areas of risk management, technology, geopolitical risk, and intelligence. As a founder of WorldAware, one of the world's leading open source intelligence providers, he led the development of continuous risk management model, and he's been a thought leader in providing integrated risk management solutions to protect people, sites, supply, and information assets. Bruce was also recognized by Business Travel News as one of the top 25 most influential executives in the business travel industry. Prior to leaving the government market in 1999, Bruce worked with a number of agencies, including the NSA, the CIA, the Department of Defense, and NASA. So guys, he's not just experienced in the world of corporate security, he's seen a lot from the government side as well. Great to have you here, Bruce. We have Professor Martin Gill joining us from the UK. He's a criminologist and director of perpetuity research, which started life as a spin-out company from the University of Leicester. He holds honorary and visiting chairs at the University of Leicester in London. He's a trustee of the ACES Foundation. In 2009, he was one of the country's top 5 most quoted criminologists. And in 2016, ACES International awarded him a Presidential Order of Merit for Distinguished Service. Martin, this is in addition to a large number of other awards which he's won for his work. Martin is the founder of the Outstanding Security Performance Awards, also known as the OSPAs, and Tackling Economic Crime Awards. So Martin, thanks for joining us and waking up so early in the morning to join us.
You're welcome. Looking forward to it.
Yep. Last but not the least, we have Steffi. Steffi Singh is the APAC Senior Program Manager for High-Risk Security and Intelligence for Data Centers at Microsoft. She's also an advisor education for gender equality and women's empowerment at the World Health Innovation Summit. She's got over 15 years of experience. Previously, she worked with Meta Global Security Data Centers as a senior project manager, where she was leading the complex construction security project for the client of over 100 people on the largest hyperscale data center project in the world, which is based in Singapore. So, Steffi, welcome to this panel, and very happy and privileged to have you here as well.
Thank you. Nice to meet everybody.
So, moving on to the session, and I'm going to follow the format of asking a question to each of the panelists in turn, getting an answer from them with a follow-up question, which will be a shorter answer question, and then we'll take a few questions from the audience. So guys, if you want questions, please put them in the Q&A box and not in the chat box, because otherwise it's difficult to track them. And should we not have adequate time to handle all the questions, we'll request the panelists to also type in their answers in the Q&A box, and also reach out to the panelists directly should you want through social media. So I'm going to go from a slightly higher level to a lower level, but history continues to haunt us. And I just wanted to check with Martin that will COVID-19 continue to haunt us in 2023? And the security sector was not just affected, but also contributed hugely to corporates for management of the COVID pandemic very effectively. So how do you see them prepared for any follow-up pandemic or anything connected to this? Martin, all yours.
Well, I think that's the key, actually, in the question that, of course, as has already been seen on this webinar so far, that the world is still disrupted by the impact of many events, including COVID-19. The issue of other pandemics seems to have been much less in focus. In fact, it was a major news item in the UK this week. It attracted very little attention. It almost seems we're over it for now and we'll worry about it when we get there type of attitude in the world. A very dangerous position to take, of course, but nevertheless, that's the context in which security people operate. One of the things that I've been doing through the pandemic is thought leadership webinars, and 179 so far. I know some people in this audience have been on those. And one of the things that comes through there is that the security world coped well in some circumstances. It was very quick to praise itself. But of course, that's how all of us are, aren't we? We tend to blow up at the things we do well and try and play down the things that we didn't. But there are certainly a whole host of issues that seem to undermine good security. You know, one of the things I do as a criminologist is I speak to plenty of offenders. And the great thing about speaking to criminals is you get a criminal view. In fact, I've been going stealing with them. Let me warn you all, we give it all back, but we explain how it was taken, the criminal's view of the world. And let me tell you this, what they say is that they feel the world of security is disrupted. People are complacent, they're working from home, the world has changed, it is working in their favor. And as they say, when they target premises, they know the security is going to be there. The question is, how good is it? And unless it's very good, then they feel as though the odds are in their favor. So out there through all of this, the much less talked about bit is the way the criminals have been assessing this context too. And certainly all the evidence coming to me is they've not been put off. They're not scared. They see plenty of opportunities. And I think that's the world we operate. Just one other thing. You mentioned the OSPAs, the Outstanding Security Performance Awards. By the way, India is coming up soon. But the thing about the OSPAs around the world has taught me is the very best in security around the world is outstanding. Truly, truly, truly outstanding. And there are plenty of people to emulate. There are plenty of companies to emulate, but we're going to have to really, really be on the ball to face these challenges. And I don't think the security world universally is geared up to that, but the outstanding ones clearly are.
I appreciate that. Do you think that the whole pandemic era also led to a surge in crime as such, or did it the effect of malicious elements? Definitely so in the cybersecurity realm, but anywhere in the physical realm also?
Yeah, the patterns from criminologists suggest it was a very mixed picture. Some offences went up in some areas, so it wasn't a global trend as such. But here's the thing. Around the world, criminals did see that certain opportunities were blocked and new ones were being created. And don't forget, criminals depend on opportunities being created and security not being good. Where security is really good, criminals are on the run. They know that. There are plenty of weaker targets. So the odds are in favor of good security here. Get it right, and it's a good story to tell. But I'm afraid show some clinks in the armor and they're very quick to spot and adapt and react and spread the word, unfortunately.
Thanks, Martin. I think we'll come back to you on more things as we go around. But I'll take on the second aspect of this world of disorder as Nitin described it. The first one was the pandemic. So I've already asked Martin to give us his thoughts. And moving to Steffi, Steffi just wanted to pick your brains on the second aspect of the world of disorder that Nitin mentioned. That was the Russia-Ukraine war, or rather, as you put it, the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Does it have any significant implications in the Asia-Pacific region? And then people talk very loosely about this being the test bed for China's invasion of Taiwan. Do you actually see any, traction in that, or any serious thought in that? What are your evaluation of the risks for the Asia-Pacific region from this Russian invasion of Ukraine?
Thank you, Sushil, for the question. And just to echo, I guess, what Martin has said previously, I think it's a little bit of an attitude of we'll worry about it when we get there. And I think if we look at the conflict in Ukraine, it does highlight the point around the unfortunate aspect that in my previous career before going into the data center security space, I was a historian. So looking at Russian history, in particular, I think is quite useful in the conflict of Ukraine, because it's not an isolated conflict. This is something that's been going on for, I guess, the past 100 years. In terms of Ukraine's independence, they've only become independent in the early 1990s with the collapse of the USSR. And a lot of the conflict, I think, is rooted back in, some of this historical context. I think it's also easy to draw parallels to the current conflict as to back into our 1930s and what happened with areas like the Sudetenland. And I think it's easy to draw those comparisons in areas like Crimea. I think that one thing that is becoming abundantly apparent as well is that it's easy to look at these situations as an isolated conflict when you're looking at it from a historical perspective. However, we're only 11 months into this conflict, and it's very easy for an escalation to take place. All it takes is one mishap or one miscalculation on any of the sides involved. And if we look at the situation in Ukraine, we have probably a conflict that's already taking place with such a massive investment from so many different countries with different vested interests across the world, that it won't be just an escalation that impacts Europe. It will be a global escalation, and be that taking a few months or a few years to feel the full impact of that. I think we should definitely be wary of the past because it tends to repeat itself in different patterns. So I would be, I guess, concerned about what's happening in Ukraine and how it can have a global impact, not just here in APAC. On a practical level, obviously, it's had major issues for supply chain. We've had a fuel crisis in Europe this year. It's had all sorts of knock-on impacts and will continue to do so as long as it's not resolved. And I don't see it getting resolved anytime soon. Very hard to answer the next part of your question, because I think it's a very broad and extremely complicated topic, and we'd need many hours to discuss it. But I think that as an overarching comment as well, I would say that it's not the same situation for the China-Taiwan conflict. I think you have a lot more geographical issues to consider, and you have more I think it's a lazy comparison to kind of say that just because this happened in Ukraine, that it's something that can happen very easily in Taiwan. I do think it's a different context, and most of the Intel community would agree as well that it's certainly not on the cards for the next 10 and conservatively 20 years. But we never know. Obviously, circumstances can change, and that can change the outlook as well.
Thanks. That's a very candid answer. And, since you look after this huge emerging field of data centers for your organization across Asia Pacific region, do you see any fallout of this Russian invasion of Ukraine on your specific industry? We've talked about the geopolitics in general, but do you think it affects your specific industry in any particular manner?
I think that the current conflict has impacts. Obviously, I mentioned supply chain is definitely one of those. If you look at, I won't make it about my industry specific, but I do think it has knock-on impacts that are not well spoken about or understood in the media. So, looking at Ukraine in terms of its resources, its natural resources, it has some of the best natural resources in the world for different I'm thinking lithium, or I'm thinking about different components for infrastructure projects in general. So I do think there's that impact of it. And just, I don't know if any of you have any shipping or supply chain, awareness over that in your organizations, but it's certainly delayed. Even on a personal level, our shipping to come from Ireland to Singapore took about 6 months longer than it was supposed to. So I think it has all sorts of implications for general movement of goods and people.
Thank you, Steffi. That's very enlightening. And I'll come back to you again as well. And moving to Bruce. So Bruce, you have been in this field and pioneering this field of travel risk management for a while. So in your opinion, what do you think are the major travel risks in the Asia Pacific region in the coming times, especially now that with the sort of waning of the pandemic effect, the business travel, the corporate travel has opened up. Asia Pacific as a region has opened up for business opportunities. So we have people from across the world coming into the Asia Pacific region for business travel, of course, for tourism and leisure. That was always there. how do you see organizations looking at the whole concept of travel risk management, and what can they do better that they didn't do earlier?
Okay. Well, thanks, Ashil. One is, I think everyone's counting on China roaring back with travel and a lot of economies that rely on tourism and travel want to see that happen, right? And so I think business travel will continue to lag, but this will be here. And the other piece of this is, travel is impacted by people's perceptions of the region, the countries that they're going to, right? And I think, in Asia Pac right now, we have, I wouldn't call them emerging threats. I will call them simmering threats, right? That are coming from 2020, from the overhang of COVID-19 and the pandemic activities that occurred as far as economic impact, supply chain, all of inflation. And when you have, these kind of simmering issues out there, at any time it can pop, right? As we saw in Sri Lanka or Bangladesh or Pakistan. And so, that's what gives people pause, right? And unease when they see that social unrest and see that kind of activity, out there. So, we have to, look at that and think about, do we have a sense of when those indicators are there, when it will tip, and we will have issues, is probably the key thing that, we're doing in a proactive way as far as threat monitoring and those kinds of things. But anyway, so, for the travel space, the other piece of this is the atmospherics. And we've mentioned here already 3 times or 4 times about, China, Taiwan. There's no question that China and Taiwan are going to dominate kind of the global news cycle as we go through 2023. I'm also of opinion, I won't put a 10 or 20 year marker out there, but I will be very confident that it's highly unlikely that we're going to see any kind of kinetic conflict between China and Taiwan in 2023. So I can put some bets on that. But anyway, so but there's a whole series of things going on right now in the region. Of course, Bangladesh has elections just around the corner, early 2024. And so, kind of that election and economic conditions there are indicators of where we might see activity. Myanmar's economy is, been in dire straits. We'll see how the junta manages that going forward and what that may portend within Myanmar. Sri Lanka is also in a shambles, and we've seen protests. We've seen that we're going to see pressure mounting for elections there, and it cascades, and of course Pakistan just trying to rebound from all the natural disasters, the heat wave, the floods. But one of the things that we look at there is there's I think 8 million people that are homeless right now, right, in Pakistan, and about over 14 million people that have true food insecurity. So there's a lot of challenges there, right? So, kind of in wrapping mine up, I'm going to try and go on the positive side. We have the Philippines, we put the thing recovery and reset, right? They're going to be recovering with their economy, and they are going to be resetting their international relations, especially with the US, right? Indonesia's, got elections and politics are going to dominate. We're going to see this new criminal code and what that, looks like in this year. And I'll finish with India, and India is leading the pack regionally as far as economic growth and getting back strong in the region and standing tall. Those would be my comments.
Thanks, Bruce. And what about the North Asian region, Japan, Korea's? What about some parts of the Southeast Asian region? Like everyone has been saying that, it's going to be booming economy for them. So obviously there's going to be a lot of business travel there. How do you see these regions?
So let's take the North first. And I think, again, people have said, there's 3 things that are that are there, right? Well, there's Korean Peninsula, North-South Korea is an issue. We talked about China, Taiwan, China and the East and South China Sea is ripe for mistakes and potential issues there, right? So, that's kind of the northern side. And I would say, generally in the Southeast Asia, with travel coming back, with people relocating supply chains from China and moving them to India and Southeast Asia, Vietnam, we see, clearing clouds in 2023 from an economic perspective. So I think we're going to see demand. I think we're going to see bumps in the road, but we'll see generally a good 2023.
Thanks, Bruce. Very useful information, and I'll come back to you again. Moving to Craig, we've seen that this Asia Pacific region, and this was highlighted in the other speakers as well, that is prone to a huge number of natural disasters and extreme weather phenomena due to the typical geographical locations and the climatic conditions. How are these challenges being handled by security and resilience managers across the region, and what can they do better to deal with these?
Yeah, thanks, Sushil. I can see some great questions coming in, so hopefully we can get to some of those and be a facilitator for some good conversations. So, many of the corporate folks on today's call, I guess, will come at this question from their own perspectives. And from my perspective, we're quite exposed to these risks. And what we're talking about, folks, here really is weather-generated impacts around flooding and landslides. So the footprint of my organization makes us quite exposed to these risks. And, we've considered extreme weather and its impacts quite a key thematic risk for our organization. So we've done a couple of the classic things. We're trying to be better at anticipating, and we're trying to ask ourselves how we can enable that anticipation with technology a bit better. We're very focused on preparedness, and I'll come back to that in a moment. And of course, we're trying to be better prepared and better structured for our response. I've spent a bit of time trying to explain the business benefits. We run a platform business. And so our key phrase really around that platform business is keeping it always on. We're very much focused on our customers and the communities that we serve. So in recovering from these kind of events, we can serve those customers, we can support those communities, and in doing so, we can kind of build our brand and reputation. We consider ourselves quite good at response, just based on the core culture of the organization. What we've not been as good at is perhaps preparedness. So we've had a bit of focus recently on nuts and bolts. Do we have generator sets? Do we have fuel supplies? Do we have the ability to charge mobile phones? Very granular things that often get missed out. We've broken these down classically, Sushil, into those that are sudden and those that are gradual. So there are some like typhoons. This typhoon season, perhaps the Philippines is a great example, which are somewhat seasonal and can be to some extent forecast. We've tied all of this effort back to our desire to be a more sustainable corporate corporation, looking about how we can not just respond and recover, but how can we help communities actually be better prepared and solve whatever they can solve. So for us, in a year, I think, where there's apparently, I'm not a climatologist, but there is some La Nina effect at the moment, I believe, which is some unique oscillation of the sea, leading to an exacerbation of some of these factors. For 2023, above and beyond what you could say is perhaps a new normal of climatic events, for 2023, we're trying to be much better prepared. We've got a real focus on preparedness.
Thanks, Craig. And that was very useful and good to see that an organization which has such a large footprint is taking steps to be more prepared to face natural disasters. So natural disasters were just one of the things that caused crises in the Asia Pacific region. Of course, we had the other crisis points like fallouts of the pandemic and geopolitical shifts which disrupted supply chains. So, Matt, you've been handling crisis response for a long time. in various organizations. So do you think there's a need to shift our mindset on crisis management? What we used to call crisis can very easily be the new normal today. And security professionals play a very important role in managing the crisis or handling some parts of the crisis in most organizations. So how can security professionals be better tied up with the business with respect to managing and responding to crisis in the Asia Pacific region, especially to handle crisis which we've not been able to predict? We were talking about, like Craig mentioned, that there are some things which are very sudden and sporadic, and there are some things which can be seasonal and oncoming. So what are your thoughts, Matt?
Oh, thanks, Sushil. Right. So absolutely, I agree. Right. Crisis takes on different forms all the time. Right. It can be a man-made disaster. It can be a natural disaster in the form of hurricane, typhoon, flood, and it has different trends, right, happening throughout the years. And we have to recognize that the world we live in today is rapidly changing. To a previous point made by Professor Martin. Right. And the way that we as a corporation, I think, deal with crisis will need to evolve too, right? The mindset shift that we talk about. So, I mean, in the past, when we talk about crisis management, it was always primarily focused on containing and resolving the immediate problem on hand, right? But however, we also realize that there is a growing recognition, that crisis management must also consider some of the long-term impact on our stakeholders, our employees, customer, or even when we talk about the wider community, right? So the one of the key shift in mindset I think is necessary for us as practitioners, I believe, is the focus on having transparency and open communication. So, I mean, what do we mean by that, right? A lot of us may not be unaware that is, a lot of corporations may have been reluctant to share information with employees and stakeholders during a crisis, for all the good reasons, right? And we feel that today it is actually widely accepted by that being transparent and honest is actually critical, to build the trust and confidence with employee and customer during a crisis event, rather than just providing a white comment holding statement and those kind of things, right? So what it means by providing regular updates, being open and honest about the situation, to engaging directly with employees to understand the needs and to get direct feedback from them. I think that is the first key shift, right? Another shift is a focus towards total resiliency and sustainability. So we are trained to be always focused on getting back to business as quickly as possible when we are faced with a crisis. So while this, I think, at this today's world is still very true and applicable, but we also realize that crisis can provide opportunity for what I call accelerated growth and innovation, right? So, for instance, think about how many of you have worked from home full-time before the pandemic, but over the last couple of years, a lot of us has been doing that, and it's all accelerated because of the pandemic. So, simple terms is that, corporation must be really prepared to adapt and evolve in the face of adversity, and importantly, to be more proactive in building resilience and sustainability into the different parts of the business. We all know that, right? Every crisis presents an equal opportunity, and I really think that this is where a lot of us as security professionals can get into the business value chain in an organic manner, and not just kind of like showing up during an incident or a crisis. So having a collaborative and inclusive approach to crisis management, I guess it's not just having a well-written plan, and worse off is just understood by a few. So we need to really involve the different organs of the organization, department, businesses, employee, or even customer in our planning and response effort, trying to work together, right, to find solution. And a lot of time there will not be the perfect solution, but we need to find solution that's practical and reasonable, and really the pandemic has pushed many of us in the call today, right, to the forefront. But how do we maintain this momentum? I think this is one of the important considerations we all should be thinking, right? And like a lot of people say, don't waste a crisis, think about how we can get into the business value chain so that we will be an organic component of the business function.
Thanks, Matt. And the definition of what is a crisis and how we handle it varies so much. So yesterday I was in discussion with a organization for whom I'm planning a crisis simulation exercise, and it was so strange to set the scenario where 3 years back their whole scenario was that, okay, if the office is unavailable, can we maintain 100% resiliency by working from home? And the pandemic actually pushed them into all of this with the digital transformation. So now they said, yes, we can work 100% from home. And now the situation that we are worrying about in that particular country is that as a fallout of the Russia-Ukraine war, if there is a complete power outage in the cities, then the only islands of power or electricity will be these office spaces, because they have backup power generators and all. So how are you going to get these people who are working from home back into the offices and operational? So the whole situation turns around so fast. But thanks for your insights, and we'll come back to you. So now I have a second round of questions for which I just need quick answers from all of you, and very short answers, because we have some interesting questions from the audience, which I would like to handle as well. So Martin, coming to you, the first question would be that as far as you're concerned, for security leaders in the Asia Pacific region, what do you think is the top geopolitical concern?
Well, I think for security leaders in the region, what everyone has been saying is understand your business, understand its risks, and be very attuned to them. As Craig said, some of the small things are really to get ready to. And, when I come from my world of crime, they look at the small things. They do look at where the opportunities rest. So there is I think more than ever, outstanding security management is about doing the essentials brilliantly, not about trying to do something out of this world. So back to basics, be good and outstanding at good security, and don't underestimate the importance of being acutely aware of global risks, business aims, and the ongoing threats to them at every point along the way.
Thank you. That really appeals to me as a military man. Back to basics is what we always say, that, the guy at the fighting end should know what to do with his weapon, and the rest will fall in place automatically. Thank you for that. And Steffi, so this is going back to your core expertise, which you're handling correctly, data centers. There's a huge boom in the data center industry in the Asia Pacific region. Do you see any additional security concerns for security leaders, which are a fallout of as various things happening which would affect the data center industry? Should those people who are putting so many millions of dollars into creating new data centers, is there anything that they should be mindful of from the security perspective?
Obviously, and this is for everybody on the call, they should be hiring the best in the business in terms of security personnel to protect these facilities. I don't think it poses necessarily additional concerns, Sushil. I think that when we look at within our space, within the cloud space, this is for business functionality. It's absolutely essential that this critical infrastructure runs. And as we expand into the region, obviously it's very important to protect critical infrastructure. So I don't think it's additional. I think it still goes to core business function for our operations to run. We need to have them in secure places and secure facilities, protecting staff, assets, and reputation.
Thank you, Steffi. That's yeah. Go ahead if you have something to add.
If that's towards me, I might have hit the wrong button.
Okay, thanks a lot. We've been speaking about the Asia Pacific region and the geopolitics of things that are happening around the world and the fallout on the Asia Pacific region. But remember that this is also a region which has 70% of the humanity of the world living here, with huge ethnic diversity, languages, religions, cultures. From the travel risk perspective, do you see any major risks from the socio-economic and the socio-cultural part of the parameters, Bruce?
Sure. I mean, it's probably risks not only to travel, but that stems from the intrinsic risks that appear in those countries. And when we look at the macro level, especially in the APAC region and primarily in Southeast Asia and India and elsewhere, we look at two fundamental drivers: income inequality, right? And political instability that's driven by the diverse religious, ethnic, cultural backgrounds and everything that is the amalgamation of Asia, right? And so those, kind of situations, especially in the political instability, are injected by vested interests of external players, right? External actors that are coming into the region that can also create perturbations in that whole fabric. So that's what we look at, and how that drives unrest and terrorism and other things that can pop up within the region, and ultimately that is a knock-on effect in causing travel to be concerning or terminating.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, thanks for that. Craig, what do you see now? You've been operating in the Southeast Asian region, and that's your core sort of responsibility as well as your major area of operations. What do you see as a few or maybe the top two risks that you could identify in the Southeast Asian region that security professionals would need to manage?
Yeah, I've actually got three, Sushil, so forgive me for that.
Yeah,
I'll start with one that's perhaps more specific, which is this will be an interesting year politically for the region, specifically elections in Thailand in May. But more on my radar is the build up to early 2024 elections in Indonesia. And we're looking closely at how conservative Islamist groups, other opposition groups might start to pressure the government, and how generally campaigning may go over this year. The other two are right back into the areas that we've looked at already in terms of weather. The monsoon period, if there is still a defined period, begins around June. And we're seeing, as we've said several times, increased severity, and then that can flow down into inflationary pressures. And then finally, the cost of living crisis, although thankfully less deep and maybe hopefully shorter in this part of the world, is still having an impact. And we are also monitoring important events like the rice harvest, which is generally around September, October, and food security impacts in places like the Philippines and Indonesia in particular.
And yeah, that's good. And as Bruce mentioned, he's also concerned about the income equality aspect, which does play a lot of socio-economic turmoil in any country. Is there any specific part of the Southeast Asian region that you feel this is going to hit?
No, I think, well, if there was, I think, Sushil, it would be the two I just mentioned, Philippines and Indonesia. Large populations living, in many cases, a fairly subsistence life. And they're both countries where I think emotions can boil over.
Yeah. Thanks, Craig. And before we come to the audience questions, a quick one for you, Matt. If you were to, based on your experience of handling crisis in the region, if you were to give one key takeaway to the audience for crisis management in the coming year, what would that be?
So I really think there's no rocket science to this question, right, Sushil? I think preparation is really the key, like what Greg has mentioned, right? And preparation will involve a host of action, right? So one of it is really, we talk about having a plan. But I just want to say that focusing on just a well-written plan is not a good plan, right? But having a playbook that's understood by the crisis management team and the wider employee population, having effective communication strategy, like to my earlier point, and also with perhaps clear decision-making authority, at the regional level, because a lot of time we depend on the corporate team to make decision, but that is not good enough, right? Because of the time zone, the time delay. So there's a lot of latency for us to implement meaningful action quickly and effective enough. So, I mean, in addition, I also believe that the organization we are in today should prioritize transparency. And essentially what I think is we should be more human, and to practice empathy towards a more people-centric culture especially during a crisis, right? And kind of like brainstorming how to do things better to help people around us, as opposed to just doing what needs to be done in the crisis. I think that's what my perspective is.
So you mentioned having a crisis management plan. Do you advocate stress testing of this plan through various tabletops or exercises or maybe actual simulations, and how effective are those in your opinion?
So absolutely critical, right? So a plan without stress tests, exercise, and communication it's just a pile of paper, right? That doesn't mean anything during a real life crisis. So we need to have regular exercise. We need to have communication to the team members, and importantly, update that member list, right? People come and go, they change roles. So we don't want to have a plan with all the outdated information there, right? And when it comes to activation, we should also practice the activation. Whether you're using a tool like Everbridge or OnSolve, I mean, there's many tools out in the market. We need to be sure that we are rehearsing, the actual activation that we will be doing in a real life crisis, right? So stress test, exercise, communicate, making sure that people knows about what is the expectation. I think it's absolutely critical to the success of a good crisis management plan.
Thank you, Matt. That's very important. And we do have some time to take a few audience questions. Thank you to the panelists. Some of you already answered these in the Q&A box. So I'll request those of you who've asked the questions from the audience to please see the answered section of the Q&A box, because a lot of the panelists have already answered them. There are some which have been specifically addressed to some of the speakers. So I'll take one for you, Martin, where I think one of the security professionals has very rightly voiced his concern to say that there's an overall dip in the world economic scenario. And because in the field, or in the industry, security is the first field which gets affected in terms of cost cutting or deductions or layoffs. What do you suggest? How to survive? How should a security professional survive in such a situation of economic recession or depression?
I'm interested in the question. I'm interested in your starting point that you say it's true. I'm not sure it is true. I think all worlds, I speak to people from HR and marketing, another one from consultancy. In fact, I was playing golf with some people a little while ago, and they all felt it was their worlds that were the most affected. And I don't know what the science is behind this. I haven't read anything, but even if it is true, look, to some extent, the more that an organization is ingrained in the objectives and the operations, is seen to be effective, is seen to offer value, the more it's likely to be on the side of being kept than being got rid of. And I don't think security's been good at that generally. And I think that's the transition that other worlds have made earlier. HR is one. At one point, there were just people on the edge, and they're now central to operations. Security is definitely making that transition, particularly at the upper levels. But still, when I first started lecturing, I used to go around the world and say, what's more important to the business leader, security expertise or business expertise? And in the early days, it was security expertise. Now, nearly always they say business expertise. That's the transition that's being made.
Right.
But it's not always the background of security professionals. Increasingly it is, but it has not always been. And so that's the transition I think becomes more important. Relate to the business aims, and that's the best way to stay safe.
Thank you. That's a good answer. Thanks. And thanks for the question, Prashant Tiwari. We also have a question from Sam, and this is, since it's related to the Southeast Asian markets and also regarding banks and non-banking finance corporation, I think Craig would be the best person to take this on, where somebody asked that their operations of banking and finance NBFCs in the Southeast Asian market. Can you give some idea on what is their future, how they'll perform? I know it's not a typical security related question, but obviously if the companies do well, then the field of security also needs to look at that more critically.
Yeah, probably the toughest question on the sheet. Thank you, Sushil. I would come back to the points made by other panelists that given the environment, I think we're in a to quote the World Economic Forum, no surprises, we're in for an uncertain and turbulent decade ahead, right? No rocket scientists required to come up with that summary. I do firmly believe, linking this back to what we do and how that can support the aims and successes of the organizations that we work for, that those companies that manage risk proactively will A, survive, and B, be the more profitable. Now, that message to the previous point is still a difficult one to maybe translate or to influence with. But to be honest with you, that's on us, and that's for us to raise our game. There's not going to be some light bulb awakening on the commercial side. It's for us to become more business skilled and be able to explain ourselves and sort of add our value more readily.
Thank you. And I think that echoes what Professor Martin was also trying to say. So thanks for that. There's a question to Matt as well. And I am not sure of the name of the attendee. He says, there have been some, in your experience, what have been or where have been some of the successes for businesses to stay engaged with the crisis management leadership who were also the COVID management leaderships? Because in times of crisis, everyone looks at security and the CMT. So people who handle the COVID well, are they still relevant? Are they being still looked at by the leadership as being able to handle crisis? I think this is the crux of the question, if I understood it correctly.
Yeah, so Sushil, thanks. And how I interpret this is very similar to what you have just shared, right? A couple of interesting observations here, right? Because I always, kind of share with people, the business started to know security more through crisis, because a lot of folks that's managing the crisis come from security department. So it is not a bad comment, which I think is beneficial to us in a way that now we are more visible to the business because of the pandemic that happened or the crisis that happened, that we are part of that very important process, right? But to my previous question, how do we stay relevant? I think that is the key question, right? And I did see successes in my own organization. So I can just give a couple of examples, right? So now I'm really heavily involved in some of the regional customer success engagement, because we are more visible to the business. They know what we're doing for the company. They want to share those success stories with the customers. So they came to us and say, hey, Matt, can you be part of this panel with the customer? Describe what you do for the company in terms of crisis management, protecting the data of the company, and those kind of things. So in the past, I still remember we need to spend a lot of effort chasing after the business, right? But now the business is coming directly to us, which I think is a huge success.
Thank you. I think that's an amazing observation, and really, really happy to see where, the business is pulling your expertise to further its case with its potential customers or with its existing customers. I think that's a great role that crisis management leaders have played during the COVID, and I think they should keep at it and engage with the business. There's one last question I'll take from the audience before we close the session, and this is specifically addressed to Bruce. Maybe you've read the question already. So Balaji says that, how do you evaluate the recent statements by the US General Mike on the most likely China-Taiwan war in 2025 and its implications?
Yeah, Mike Minahan, General Minahan. Mike, I would say, is the fact that email memo got out was disappointing. I think he was trying to basically put the country on notice that it can't sit on its laurels and that it needs to be thinking about that possibility and preparing for it, because it's going to take several years to prepare for something like that, if not more, right? And so that was where I think his mindset was more of kind of raising the specter versus predicting that there would be kinetic conflict between the U.S. and China in 2025. So I knowing Mike and the demeanor, I think that's really what this is about, not some 4-star general prediction that we're going to be at war.
Thank you so much, Bruce.
Sure.
And that's, I think we've run out of time for the questions. There are a few questions in the Q&A box which remain unanswered. So I'll request my esteemed panelists to please type out your answers to them if you know them. That make sure that everyone goes away with something and is happy. Just a quick round. Can I take a 10-second quote from each of you, round robin? So let me start with Steffi. Anything that you just want to give as a quote for takeaway to the audience?
I just think I'll pick up on one of the questions that went into the chat about the opportunities within the space for security professionals. And I think that for all of the risks and conflict and all of the bad stuff going on in the world, there's still a lot of good stuff and good organizations that are working, and to Matthew's point as well, working effectively to mitigate against these risks and working collaboratively. So I think forums like this are really helpful to share ideas and share resources and meet other security professionals, and to learn from each other. And if we can do that, maybe we have some hope of addressing the next crisis that comes along.
Thank you. So collaboration is the key. Any takeaway quote from you, Martin?
I just agree with Steph. I think that one of the big important points about this world is the outstanding people in security are really very, 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 very good. And we need to emulate those. Don't forget, criminals are looking for weak links and they spot them very easily.
Thank you. Closing quote, Bruce?
Yeah, we talk a lot about security getting, presenting its value to the organization. And you can do that in a very clear, connected way by focusing on what are the value generating objectives for your organization set by the board and by your senior management. And then be in the certainty management business, help them look at that objective. And from an operational risk perspective, all the disciplines, how can we increase the certainty that you will achieve that objective and all of your objectives? So you then become connected at the hip with the people that are delivering on those objectives, and they can't live without you because they need that certainty that they're going to deliver. And get rid of list-based risk registers and all that, get to objective-centric risk management.
Thank you. Thanks, Bruce. Good takeaway. Craig, what about you?
I'd end also with positives back to the region. I mean, we're lucky enough to live and work in a region which is very investor friendly. We have many national agendas that are driving domestic GDP growth. We've got reasonable continuity and harmony in policy, and we've got the Chinese economy reopening, which will definitely boost travel. So I see a much more positive outlook than maybe we would have had just 6 months ago.
Thank you so much, Craig. And closing statement, Matt?
Sure. So I think we just can't just focus on doing the right thing, right? But it's more on doing the right thing in the right way. I mean, outcome is very important in a crisis management scenario, but let's don't forget about the process on getting there.
Thank
so
you.
My ending statement is let's all try to be more human, especially during a crisis.
That's a good one. Thank you so much. So let's not forget the human aspect at the end of the day. Thank you so much, panelists. Thank you, Steffi, Bruce, Professor Martin, Craig, Matt. You all have been wonderful. The audience has been wonderful. They've asked some very relevant questions, and I'm glad we got the extra time to look at those questions. Shreya, sorry for overshooting by a couple of minutes, but I'm sure you'll manage fine. I just didn't want to stop anyone when they were giving out their views. So thank you so much for being part of this panel. I'm sure we will see you in more of our events in future, and I'm sure the audience will have more information to take away you in coming sessions. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, and have a good day, all of you.
Thank you so much. And I'd like to thank all our eminent panelists for making the time, joining us and giving such fantastic insights. And Sushil sir, as always, for you to guide the discussion so effortlessly and taking the best out of the panel that you always have. We now have a demonstration of our risk tracker portal. And for those who've joined us before, as you know, it is our AI assisted Intel platform. And for those who are joining for the first time, it's been proprietary and completely built in-house. And I'm now going to invite my colleague, Ms. Madhura Chanda. She is a senior risk analyst of the predictive risk intelligence team at MitKat, and she will be showcasing how the risk tracker portal can be used across cases and the benefits of having this portal. Madhura, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Shreya. Very good morning, afternoon, and evening to everyone, to our esteemed panelists and the participants who have joined from across the world. My name is Madhura, and I'll be demonstrating our in-house built AI-assisted risk intel portal, which caters all your analytical and risk tracking requirements. So just give me a moment. I'll just share my screen. I hope it's visible. Shreya, can you please confirm?
Yes,
Yes, it's visible.
All right, great. Okay, so as Shreya has already mentioned that it's proprietary and completely in-house built, and it has several features actually, but I'll start with RIME, which stands for Risk Intelligence and Monitoring Engine, which is our proprietary OSINT tool, and which comes with geofencing capabilities, which means it has high scope of customization. Now, no matter how much or how many resources you deploy, it becomes an absolutely impossible task to go through all the events that is taking place in your geography of interest manually and then segregate the relevant ones while staying true to the timeliness factor. And that is where we offer you RIME. So it is absolutely created to cater your SOC team's requirements and your command center requirements. And it literally ticks the checkboxes of all the essential needs of the command center, be it timeliness, be it granular coverage, be it the wide array of risk categories like political, external threats, natural disaster, crime, cyber, etc. You name it, and RIME has gotten it covered. So it ensures relevancy as well as efficiency in the most economically viable setup. So what it does is it basically populates information from open source media across all types, that is reliable sources, credible sources, social media handles of competent authorities, and of course from the local, national and international news portals, and across all levels, that is from local to national to regional to international. Next is RIME populates information at real near time. So the timeliness factor is also checked. And since our focus and we excel in pace and in granular coverage, we often have noticed that very remote events, those are first captured by the vernacular media than the national or the international news platforms. And that is why RIME also have sources from the vernacular media as well. And what the smart tool does is it translates the vernacular media into a readable English format and then presents in front of your screen. So everything will be coming towards your right-hand side of your screen in a live manner. Now, you can also declutter the screen using our keyword search option over here, and also the filters where you can filter out option on the basis of specific geographies, the risk categories, the relevancy, the language, as well as keyword searches. Now, we also understand that apart from tracking events live, it is also important that you can go back to important events that were proliferated on an earlier date. For that, we have the event search option, the keyword monitor option, as well as the event archive option. It is like a very important tool over here. Now, in case your SOC team failed to monitor RIME for a particular period of time, all you have to do is set the minutes till when they have missed out on monitoring RIME and click on the download button, and an Excel file comprising of all the events that populated during those particular minutes will be downloaded for you. Moving on, we also have a very able team of subject matter experts who are operating on a 24/7 basis round the clock. And they are, and what they do is whenever there is any relevant information that crops up in RIME and it is relevant to your organization, they pick it up from RIME, corroborate it from multiple sources, verify the information, apply customized impact analysis, trend analysis, and recommendations, and makes it a complete tailor-made and refined alert for your organization, and which we dispatch on a timely basis on both our as WhatsApp alerts as well as the email alerts. Now, the same alerts can also be viewed on the portal itself from the risk tracker section. So as the name suggests, you can basically track all the risk alerts that have been shared with you over time. This site also comes with an interactive map, and here too your offices, your asset locations will be geotagged, which is indicated by these small green colored geo icons. And also you will see over here colorful diamond shaped icons. So what these icons are basically, it posits the diamond icons, it posits the events, the location of the event, and the color basically denotes the risk level. Now, if you hover over one of the diamonds, it will give you a very succinct information of the alert that is covered for you. And once you click on it, it will transfer you to the more detailed version of that particular alert, where you will get the title, the risk categories, a tracking ID, the date, the description, background for better contextualization, impact analysis, then recommendations, as well as sources. Now, this can be downloaded in the form of a PDF as well for your internal circulation. We also have this feature called affected entities. What it does is here you can actually adjust the impact radius in kilometers according to your requirement in order to see whether any of your employees or your assets fall under the radar of this particular event or not. Now, over here too, you can declutter the screen and can streamline your search experience using our search by keyword option, as well as the filters, where you can go back up to 5 days where you can just simply go back to 5 days for all the events that were covered in the last 5 days, and apply filters on the basis of relevancy, region, and etc. etc. Next is, we also have this feature called, one second, I'm just not being able to move my face from here. Okay, I could. Yeah, okay. Now we also have this particular, in case you want us to track any event on a very actively on a 24-hour basis. So what you can do is, we have this feature called add to watch list. So all you have to do is simply click on it, and a simultaneous intimation will be sent to us as well. And this particular event will be made live for you. That is basically the sound of the intimation. So it happens pretty simultaneously, and we will track it for you live. Now, in case there are any particular event which has developments in days later on as well, you will get those information under the same title in the related event section, and like it is here for the Russia-Ukraine crisis, and everything can be downloaded in the form of a PDF, be it related events or current events or any parent event. Now, moving on, we have various various features that will actually help you to track risk on a daily basis. The first one we have is Event Archive. So as the name suggests, it basically is a repository of all the events that have been shared with you. And in case you want to go back to a particular event, all you have to do is simply paste the tracking ID over here and click on search, and the detailed version of that particular event will be reflected on the screen. And in case you want to go back to events which is covered in a particular month, all you have to do is select the preferred month according to your requirement and set the year and click on download, and an Excel file comprising of all those events covered on that particular month will be downloaded for you. Next, we have the upcoming event section. So this section reflects all the information which will remain relevant in the upcoming days and months, and it will basically help you revise and devise mitigation measures accordingly. Next, we have the event calendar. So it is not an ordinary calendar which just comprises of public holidays or national holidays. It basically gives you an overview of all the events which have an annual recurrence rate. Here too, you can use filter depending on the months as well as the geographies. We have almost over 80 countries marked till now. Next, we have the weekly forecast system. So over here, all the events which will remain relevant in the upcoming week, and in case there are any event which is marked in the event calendar and is falling in the upcoming week, that will be reflected in this particular section. You can apply filter using the keyword search as well as on the basis of various business classifications, geographical classifications. This area too comes with an interactive map for you. Next, we have Kaleidoscope. Kaleidoscope is a bit different from the tools that I have demonstrated so far, in the sense that it is an analytical tool and it actually helps you understand how a particular event will pan out in future. That is, and it comprises of all the events which requires active documentation and preventive actions. And it is tracked in these 4 quadrants and helps you understand whether a particular event has the potential to develop into a black swan or a gray rhino event or not. Now, in order to get more details, all you have to do is click on the particular event. It will open up into a more detailed version, and it is tracked on the scale of likelihood and impact. And in order to understand the impact and the likelihood scale ratings, you have to click on the more info section, where a very detailed and crucial information is given how we calculate the impact scale. Next, we have the resources section. It is a repository of all the annual and semi-annual analysis that MitKat produces. We have the special advisory section, the periodic updates, which are the monthly and weekly updates, the special reports, the risk reviews, the blogs, and the podcast. Everything is available over here. You can avail it online. You can download it for internal circulation, and also it is dispatched on your WhatsApp as well as on your email IDs. Next, we have the city brief section. It is a very useful and handy tool. Now, if you have the knowledge of the particular geography that you are traveling to, I think a significant part of the battle of mitigating risk is won right there. So this tool actually caters to that very requirement. In case you or your business executives are traveling to a new area and they just want to understand the risk scenario of that particular geography, you have to select the country. For example, I'm selecting India over here, and the city. For example, I'm selecting Shimla over here. So it will open up into a one-pager document, which is crisp enough to give you all the information on the get-go, but also detailed enough to give you the general reputation and the risk scenario of that particular space. It has key risk overview, popular business hubs, hospital locations, terrorism situation, women's safety situation, air pollution levels, everything covered, and a set recommendation and obviously helpline numbers for you to fall back on in case of emergencies. Now we also have the risk exposure. So addressing all your analytical and your quantitative requirements, we have also identified that there is a gap for a quantitative tool. And this is where we offer you risk exposure. What is done, it is also one of a kind spot and one of our most awarded platform. What it does is it basically quantifies the impact of risk on your asset locations. Now, if you look into the top left corner, it is the organization risk rating section. It gives you an aggregate of the risk rating on all your asset locations. Now, the risk rating that is shown over here is not calculated arbitrarily. But the smart tool, what it does is it gives you an average of all the risk alerts that we have on the basis of the alerts that we have shared earlier with you. In MitKat, we follow a risk rating from 0 to 5, where 0 to 1 stands for very low risk. For example, in case any scheduled strike has been called off or something of that sort, and 4 to 5, which stands for very high risk, like the Russia-Ukraine crisis. Now, in case you want to understand the risk rating for particular asset locations, that is also there in the subsection of under the organization risk rating. And in order to understand that which particular alerts lead to this particular risk rating, all you have to do is click over here and all the relevant alerts that contributed to this risk rating will appear on screen. You will also get the distribution of risk or risk categories and understand that which are the topmost risk categories affecting your organization. Now, in view of the COVID-19 restrictions and the several protests and demonstrations scheduled, we have the travel risk and the regulatory risk and the civil disturbances as the most affected risk categories at the moment. You will also understand the major risk events which is affecting your organization, like COVID-19 or the Forex crisis in Sri Lanka, and also the top risk categories which is affecting your organization. For example, if there is any travel risk or any regulatory changes, etc. Now, catering to all the quantitative, qualitative, and analytical requirements, we do understand that the human touch or your comfort of resolving your queries in person cannot be replaced. And that is why we have our USP feature, which is the query system, ask query mechanism, or the query system. All you have to do is simply type out the details of your queries which you might have, and our team of subject matter analysts will reach you out by 15 to 20 minutes in most of the cases, or at the earliest. So here I end my demonstration, and thanks a lot everyone for patience hearing. Over to you, Shreya.
Thank you so much, Madhura. That was an excellent presentation. And to the audience, if you would like any further information on the portal, you can reach out to us anytime after the seminar through our website or our LinkedIn channels, or email any one of us at the Predictive Risk Intelligence team or at MitKat Advisory in general. Mr. Kunal Solanki and Mr. Sagar Barushali's email IDs are available in the chat box as well. We now move on to our second panel discussion on new age threats to organizations, which is moderated by Mr. Mitesh Shah. Mitesh is currently the regional director for MitKat Global Consulting and based out of Singapore in the last 11 years. He is a subject matter expert in the field of risk management, organizational resilience, cybersecurity, and crisis management. He has close to 15 years of experience in consulting and training organizations on how they can de-risk their business and improve their resiliency posture. He has worked extensively in the APAC region and assisted clients across sectors of BFSI, retail, telecom, and global conglomerates. He has spoken at multiple conferences in the region, including Asia Risk and Resilient Conference, World Continuity Congress, BCI Australasia Summit, and CORE's Business and IT Resilience Summit. In terms of certifications, Mitesh is CBCI certified. He is also a CISA and CISM from ISACA and a certified ISO 27001 lead auditor. With this, I now hand over to you.
Hello, just voice check. Am I audible?
Yes.
Great. Okay, thanks, Shreya, for giving the introduction. I am privileged and honored to introduce the panel today with me. I have 5 panelists from 4 different time zones, right from Australia to UK, and I'm very much privileged to have their thoughts on this one. While discussing our event, we were discussing what are the different topics you can take, and I had suggested new security threats for this panel discussion. And let me iron out why I thought so. Let me give 2 examples. So what happened was, I have 2 daughters. One is 10 years old and one is about 3. The elder daughter was, based on COVID, everybody had access to laptops and iPads, but the school had actually told them that they need to have an iPad or some kind of tablet device with them starting last year. And all the parents were worried about why they need a laptop and iPads and all. So the school said, don't worry, we are also going to do a cyberbullying course for all of them, right? So this is when the threats are knocking on your home doors, that the threats are real. So cybersecurity, say for instance, was always been talked about at a corporate level. Now it is knocking our doors at a home level currently. I had my credit card hacked last year. No fault of mine. Yes, I was refunded and all, but yes, it has happened for many of us. It may happen for many of us who have not been done as well. The second point would be, as you're aware, regions we talk about very high level crises like cybersecurity, supply chain, terrorism, new age terrorism, all of that. But Philippines currently, what they're worried about, it's about an onion crisis that is happening there. At the current moment in Philippines, the onion prices are more than meat prices. There is actually smuggling of onion going on. My helper had gone a couple of weeks back, and she was asking whether I can take a bag of onions from there. So it is that real. So the threats sometimes we perceive are very different. It can be very strategic in nature. It can be very operational to very tactical. And that's why we have a very diversified panel who would shed light upon different aspects of new age threats to their organizations or in general for they consult for the organization they support or consult to. Allow me to give introduction to all of them in no particular order. I'll start from Wasim because he's from Australia. It's about 5:30. He should be having no drinks there, but he's with us. So thanks, Wasim, for joining us. Wasim is joining us from Sydney. He's currently the principal consultant GRC for in the Cyber CX organization. He has over 25 years of experience in GRC. I call him the global citizen because he covers regions such as Australia, New Zealand, UK, Poland, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Kuwait, UAE, and India. He has worked in the Middle East for a long time as well. He has won multiple awards, including the 2 BCI Australasian Awards and 1 BCI Global Award, which enabled him to be inducted in the BCI Hall of Fame in 2018. Wasim has been also nominated for Lifetime Achievement Award 2023 by DRI. Wasim is a big advocate that ESG and resilience has too much in common, and risk and resilience professionals must also plan and integrate ESG into their resilience and risk management plans. So that is about Wasim. Thanks. We are happy to have you in our panel. Then I'll talk about Julian. Julian Tan. Julian is the global head of security operations for Dyson. Dyson is a global name, a renowned name for a premier home appliance company, and has over 15 years of corporate experience. Has worked with organizations such as International SOS, SRS, Twitter, Amazon, and Grab. Currently, he's managing security operations strategies across APAC, UK, EMEA, and Americas for Dyson. He's also responsible for doing threat risk assessments for Dyson's business expansion division and any new ventures that they open up globally. Prior to his corporate journey, Julian has served the Singapore Defense Forces as a company sergeant major for over 17 years. Thank you, Julian, for that. He's also the chairperson of ISRM, Institute of Strategic Risk Management, Singapore chapter. He has done many courses. I saw on his LinkedIn profile. I did not add everything, but 2 of the courses that I liked is military intelligence course and also a certified counter-terrorist practitioner. Thanks, Dyson. Thanks, Julian, for having us on this panel. Then I'll move to Kagan Gan. Kagan is the general manager for Northland Controls, a premier system integrator in the physical security domain. Kagan has started from bottom up. He has over 2 decades of rich experience. He started as a technical engineer where he had hands-on on all the security controls, then moved into the project management role, and now he's serving as a general manager at Northland. Kagan has received his diploma with merit in electronic and computer engineering from Ngee Polytechnic, Singapore, and also as an advanced diploma in management from MDIS, Singapore. Thanks, Kagan, for having us on the panel. Then we have Deepayan. Deepayan is the founder and managing director for Emera Group and its subsidiaries. He has a diverse industry experience of over 27 years spanning from commodity trading, trade finance, capital marketing training, corporate treasury, and value investments. During the past decade, Emera Group, based out of Singapore, has successfully executed global trade in excess of $5 billion. Big numbers. Before his entrepreneurial venture, Deepayan worked with a global food and commodity conglomerate, Cargill Inc., for over about 14 years. He's a speaker at various trade and industry conferences, including Eurofinance and CII, to impart his experience in the area of international finance, global commodity space, and supply chain issues. He has been a BTech from IIT Kharagpur, India, and also an MBA from IIM Bangalore. In his philanthropic work, he has supported poor children's education and done is quite a bit for the society. Thank you, Deepayan, for that. Lastly, we have Sanjeev. Sanjeev is joining early from UK. Thanks, Sanjeev, for that. Sanjeev is an award-winning serial entrepreneur and an established author. Sanjeev is currently the director and CEO at D+O Group. He's also the founder of DTM Global Holdings, a tech and a media holding company supported by D+O Group. Sanjeev is the executive director and global chief visionary officer at Harley Street Healthcare Group that is reinventing the future of healthcare. A multi-market seasoned professional, he has also been the recipient of Southeast Asia's Young Achievers Award and the winner of Global Indian of the Year in 2021. He's also the winner of 21 Man of the Excellence Award. He had many other awards. That was the time I could accommodate. Sanjeev holds a dual master's degree in finance and commerce and has an MBA as well. As the CEO of the group, he oversees business activities for the group in many different countries for almost 20 years. One line that I liked about his profile was he would describe himself as a human mind is always on a journey and he's a permanent student at the University of Life. Thank you all panelists for your distinguished presence on it. I'm humbled. The only thing I can say about myself is I'm the youngest on the panel. That would say something about myself. Okay. Yeah, so I'll start with Wasim, and we'll do first round, have your opening remarks about your thoughts. So Wasim, to you, I would love to hear your thoughts with regards to what kind of threats that are currently organizations worried about. What is currently the buzzword that you're hearing? Because now you were probably in an in-house role to an organization before that, and now you're moved to a consulting role. So you'd love to hear your thoughts, especially from the Australia landscape as well.
Yeah, thanks, Mitesh, and thanks for the MitKat for giving me this opportunity. But before I start, I was thinking that I was the youngest, but maybe from the other end. So yeah, definitely. I have seen both sides of the table. Yes, I was not. I was part of the organizations in my previous jobs and all this, but I'm offering consulting, and then definitely there is a surge in entire risk landscape. And then I would specifically would like to talk on the supply chain, or sometimes they call it third-party risk management or vendor risk management. So even before, because my core is business continuity, and that has the industry trend is now from business continuity to operational resilience to organizational resilience.
Yeah.
A lot of regulations have been introduced on the resilience space. And now once you talk about resilience, they always think and plan about third-party risk management. And that is why we need to make sure that we comply to those regulations. But why it is there now, especially since COVID, what I have noticed that a lot of emphasis on the third-party risk management. And we always have heard about third-party. But in the last year or so, or 2 years, I have heard about fourth party, fifth party, and even sixth party. Most of you might be aware or have heard about fourth and the fifth party or the sixth party, but some may not have heard about it. So this is basically if you have outsourced or if you are dependent externally on any other service provider or a vendor. So for that particular vendor, they are further dependent on another critical vendor to provide you the services. So even if you ensure that your third-party vendor is resilient, and if you do a risk assessment that yes, they can continue providing your critical services, but if you do not go to the fourth or the fifth level, then you may not be resilient enough. So yes, so my take on this one is now, this is not a tick box exercise anymore. It used to be kind of tick box or a compliance activity only, where you just need to send a questionnaire to your third party. And then once you get an assurance, that's it. You might do some bit of analysis and risk profiling, but now you have to really think holistically. And then you have to go and drill down and to make sure, yes, they are compliant and they can be resilient in case of any crisis. Now, recently, not recently, I mean, Basel, they came up with the principles of operational resilience. You see there is an element of third party. There is a DORA Act, Digital Operations and Resilience Act, you would see it there. You see from UK, there is like building operational resilience by UK Prudential. There is, so every compliance act you will see in even Australia, APRA, CPS 230, operational resilience, you see an element of third party. So that is the key. So I really, and now from consulting perspective, every day, where we are getting a request to ensure that their security posture review, or be it benchmarking against NIST framework or overall against the security posture, which is a combination of many controls, be it an ISO 27001. But apart from all this, many organizations are just focusing on ensuring that their third parties, that they do the risk assessment. And now, since not many organizations, they have capability to do it in-house, they are outsourcing it to companies like CyberCX and others. So yes, definitely I've seen a lot of surge in this one. Now, before I finish, I think I would love to touch on my ESG, how that is linked to the supply chain resilience. So environmental, social, and the governance aspect of. So Many countries, even in Middle East, and of course, Australia, UK, and Europe, and US, everywhere. If you are not ESG compliant, definitely you will see that companies, they would prefer not to do business with you, or they will be enforced not to do business with you. So it's time now to start planning for the ESG compliance so that you can be resilient, and then your supply chain resilience is intact.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your initial views. I'll come back with another round of thoughts for your side. Julian, I would like to move to you, and probably specifically because I know Dyson is a global organization, and especially for each appliance that you make, you would have parts that would be sourced from multiple different countries. And in such a dynamic world where we are having so many disruptions, forget the wars, but internally political disruption and so on. How does security play a role, or what security from your side, what are the constraints that you have to come up with because of this supply chain disruption that could be for anything, right from a political protest to a war, right? You have a wide area to protect against. So Julian, probably your views, and again, from a Dyson point of view, would be love to have. Yeah.
Thank you, Mitish, and also for MitKat for giving me this opportunity to speak. I'm not going to say how well Dyson has done, and the buzzword is how you pivot, and make the organization deliver. I want to share the areas where we didn't do so well, so that it becomes a bit more compelling when we speak about it in this forum. There is something called a global poly crisis. And what this has done is it has made crisis very interconnected. So you talk about the energy crisis, you talk about food supply crisis, you talk about the wars and the geopolitical tensions globally. What it has created is a backlog of, for example, supply chain issues. Now, when we as an organization like Dyson look at where we are, we fall back to the very basics. We look at our own manufacturing sites. We look at the semiconductor chips that were shortage. We look at raw materials that was shortage, right? And we could not bring a product to a consumer's hands on time, which caused us actually, from a revenue perspective, it did impact us a little. Now, so what we did was then we learned from that, and we started to evolve. Now, the manufacturing space have been trying to keep up with the industry 4.0, and today we're talking about industry 5.0. And back to what Wasim was talking about, ESG, that is part of sustainability in the industry 5.0, and how human-centric we are with our products. And the pandemic has caused a lot of stress to our workforce. And so when we took a macro perspective of how we wanted to deliver the business, we first regionalize our efforts now rather than a global approach. So it's very localized, global policies with very regional and local distribution chains that we look at now. So we then now redistribute out to all the regions. So in short, I think the agility of an organization, and especially so with security, I think from a security standpoint is what is crucial for us is to understand the business in totality from an organization perspective, because a lot of times what I see business leaders coming back to me and saying that, Julian, you are not enabling us. Although we say we are enablers, you're telling me I can't travel. You're telling me the risk is so high. I can't do this. I can't do that, right? So we do need to now be able to understand the business in totality, what it means, and then to be able to serve the organization in, I would say, in better light, to give security a voice at the table now, right? We used to be at the back. Now we have to come to the front. And that's how I think security is evolving.
Thank you. Thank you for your initial thoughts. I like your line. Probably what most organizations are saying that forget the term security centric, be more business centric. And once you understand the business, you will be much more enabling them, because we as security professionals sometimes are known to be the no words. No, everything. No, you cannot do this because of this threats. You cannot do this because of those threats. We understand threats. We work around, put new controls, suggest alternatives, and go ahead. A great context here. From here, I moved to Kagan. Kagan, I mean, as the general manager of Northland Controls of Premier SI, system integrator, and you have been you have done a number of or executed a number of high-profile security projects in the region for larger MNCs. What are they currently worried about? What are they coming and asking you? What are new projects that you're doing that will make them know? How are you de-risking their business overall?
Okay. Thanks for MitKat for inviting me, and glad to be able to share. So as I'm from the physical security field, so I'd like to share something from a physical security perspective on some of the main threat that we're always talking about, cybersecurity. So how physical security can play a part in the cybersecurity. So cybersecurity has been upcoming a main threat for security. We all talk about cyber attack and all those things. So why is so important for physical security to play a part and to kind of to help out on the cybersecurity. So the more and more 5G network deployment, so the adoption of the edge computing has been growing very fast. So the usage for edge device has been increasing, and it will be moving very fast in the next few years. So the shift of the processing power is from the centralized computing and more moving to a decentralized mode. So the architecture, the whole structure of the market has been moving. So there's a prediction that by 2027, the more than 2.4 trillions of dollars will be spent just on the edge device, and then the more than maybe 41 billions of IoT device will be deployed globally. So that has been a huge amount. So we're looking at a lot of IoT device or edge device being deployed in the security industry, be it a sensor or cameras and all kind of device. So given the trend, I think a lot of corporation put a lot of emphasis to protect the centralized server. So they put a lot of money protecting the server, the data center, enhance the application and all this. But what they don't see is the protection of the IoT device. And if you come from a point of view from a hacker, to penetrate into a centralized server will require a lot of efforts and all kinds of techniques and all these things. But if you look at the IoT device, because the number they deploy on the networks and because of the physical location, sometimes it is a lot easier for a hacker to go access them from the remote location. And especially a lot of IoT, they're all connect to the internet. So from the through online, they actually can access to the device. And all the IoT device actually serve as a first line of defense for all before the cyber attack can come in. So what I'm seeing the threat is the organization are not paying attention on the IoT. So that is one of the threat I'm going to elaborate more. So adding to the point, I think each of the edge device now having more and more increasing processing power. So the ideal, I'm taking a camera as an example. So more and more video analytic there will be implement on the edge side versus on the central server sites. So the given the application and the things, if you have about numbers or camera deployment, it might make sense because of the cost consideration. You will put the video analytics on the edge sites, and so the camera manufacturer, what they are doing is they are making the device more and more powerful. The processing power become more and more stronger so that they can process a lot of application on the edge device. So this is a two-edged sword because it helps the organization to make use of the thing, but at the same time, the hacker, once they hack into the device, they're able to use the high processing power device to do a lot of damage on the network. Okay. So there's also one thing that we talk about 0 days bugs, where a lot of manufacturers, when they ship up a lot of edge device, because of the rushing on the thing. So each of the edge device, they're bound to have some security loophole. So usually what they will do is they will send out patches for the customers or for the installer to install those patches to kind of make it stronger, to harden the device. But many of the time the installer doesn't do the good job and the customer just ignore the thing. So by itself, I think the edge device, you need to put a lot of attention to make sure that they're hardening. And then there's also a report that talking about fake sensor or fake IoT device where there's a prediction about maybe more than 5 million of on the black market, they're selling the false sensor. So if you are not buying for an authorized or trustworthy manufacturer, those devices can come with to compromise. Actually, there's some things that can help to compromise of your data. Once you install it, you didn't know it, and then that's the hacker can have a backdoor that enter into your network. So some of the consequence, yeah.
Sure. So I take that point very seriously, because as security professional, we have been asked, when we do cyber security VAPTs, it is always about applications and all. It is never or very seldomly organizations focus on the physical security applications or controls at the end. Nobody talks about it at that length. So those are some relevant points, Kegan. I'll come back to you in the interest of time. Okay, I'll come back to you, and I'll now move to Deepayan. Deepayan, you have been a stalwart by yourself, founder and managing director for Hemera Group, and been working in the commodity segment for a very long time. I'm sure you would have some relevant examples to showcase us now how you foresee new age threats, especially probably from a supply chain point of view, that have arisen during the COVID era and now are arising after post-COVID era, if I can say.
Yeah, good afternoon, Mitesh, and my co-panelists and participants. I represent Hemera Global, which is into energy and metal trading, also into supply chain solution and risk management for the mid-sized companies across the world. When Mitesh, you talked about the supply chain risk. So supply chain is the main artery into the global economy. I mean, they say that if supply chain sneezes, the global economy catches fever. Okay. The pandemic disruptions given us learnings and brings few highlights, okay, which we have discussed in various different forums. Okay, one being the need for strategic shift from the cost optimization to the flexibility due to the demand planning complexities, which we have seen happen in the past. Something that Wasim talked about a few minutes back about the fourth, fifth, and sixth party in the supply chain. This is something we talk about, the visibility of the customer and the supplier, and the visibility of including the other logistic players and everyone involved in the supply chain, because one weak link in the supply chain can destroy the entire supply chain. I think that's what Wasim referred to. This is a very important factor. We have seen in the recent times inflations. Look at the average inflations of Germany, for example, last 10 years been below 2%. But today the inflation is at around 7.5%, which is even higher than the inflation of India today. We have never seen, the inflations of emerging market has been seen to be 4 to 5% higher than the developed market, traditionally. This has given rise to the risk of liquidity on the supply chain. We see that too much of funds chasing too few, so that mid-sized companies do get affected with the lack of liquidity. That's one. What brings me to the most important two relevant risks in the current scenario of 2023 is one is the unpredictable regulatory changes, which can happen at any time. Look, irrespective of our political ideology, certain things are going to happen, right? Many times they're not realistic, often painful, and many times doesn't give us time to react. Okay. So the unpredictability of the regulatory changes is something that I'm hearing that United States is coming out with a regulation to control, even deeper control of the global supply chain. Okay, that will affect the whole world. The second important point is the geopolitical risk, which many have already addressed. Now we've seen that the logistic nightmare which Russia-Ukraine war has created, the prices of fertilizer, food products, oil and gas has increased. The increased freight have gone up. Container shortage we are seeing around. We are seeing lesser availability of the warehouse spaces. These are the logistical nightmare. But the more important part I would highlight here is that half the world has gone through by blacklisting Russian product, as a source and a market, but the other half is accepting it, which has actually created a very crazy market of arbitrages on the commodity space. I'm just giving one example. So what does it lead to? You bring in a product to a neutral country, blend it and sell it to a country which doesn't accept this product. Or you look at a switch of documents, which gives you a lot of documentary fraud. The customers with the end customer who is actually buying a product in a country, he doesn't know about the fourth, fifth, and sixth party that in the supply chain and where the blending is happening. This gives a huge risk, or the regulatory risk. The supply chain can suddenly stop, or the financier can back out from the company, creating bankruptcies in companies. Well, we address this through transparency and technology, but technology is a tool, but all depends on whether the organizations are going to apply this or not. So hopefully the organizations in this year apply their predictions, projections, planning, and investments into the right directions to manage this risk in a right way. Over to you, Mitesh. Thank you. Mitesh, you're on mute.
Sorry, I think fascinating insights here, Dipayan. I love the idea of you saying that when supply chain sneezes, the world has fever. Definitely, we did an exercise with my daughter again. She was asked to identify what food gets on your table, and when we did this exercise, where if you do this exercise at your own home, you would be surprised to see you are having bananas from Philippines to having beans from UK to having avocados from Latin America to rice from India. The entire thing is very different. So great insights here. Thank you, sir. With that, we move to Sanjeev, and Sanjeev, thank you. You again a stalwart in your own space, established multiple programs, and you have helped a number of organizations. We would love to hear your thoughts. Probably a lot has been spoken about supply chain and cyber. Probably, what are the other threats apart from that today organizations should be careful about?
Thank you, Mitesh, and thanks everybody. It's early morning, so I'm hoping to still stay awake and talk to you guys. But this is an interesting conversation. Look, there are known unknowns, and then there are known obvious. And we discussed a lot of the known obvious, which is you have the cybersecurity. You need to keep adapting and evolving infrastructure to make sure these known threats, you are able to efficiently manage it. Can you bulletproof your infrastructure, cybersecurity infrastructure? The answer is no. But can you keep effectively and efficiently managing it? Yes. A lot of the time, people don't know what to do after they've been hacked, for example, right? Smaller organizations, especially. So, there is a lot of education that needs to go into that area. So I would focus more on the known obvious because, everybody has discussed the known obvious. But the new threats, because, we're talking about the new threats. People have talked about climate change, ESG, but I think is not just as a policy thing. It's more imminent threat. Especially if you are going and financing things, let's say in places like Maldives, for example, the climate change becomes your real risk. And are you prepared for another pandemic, for example? Because these are threats that is real coming to, and it's going to happen. So even if you were to stress test your business model, you'll realize, hey, pandemic will come through. We won't be able to stop it. Do you have a Bible? We didn't have a Bible written for a pandemic, global pandemic, right? And, we talk about globalization and deglobalization, but, we've talked about the war in Ukraine or, special operation in Ukraine, whatever you want to call it. it has an impact everywhere across the world. So what does it tell you about globalization? Globalization is still carrying on. I mean, all the talk about moving the supply chain, having a supply chain diversification, etc. In some cases, it's just a conversation. Not a lot has happened. Now, the threats that I personally have to focus on is more, imminent and more closer to me is, changes in the workforce, meaning, hybrid model that people have to work with now. It is becoming a reality. So if you are looking at a hybrid model, what it does to your cybersecurity, what it does to your corporate governance. So working from home and office is becoming a new model wherever you go. This is a real deal. The other thing is retaining talent. This is becoming a serious threat to an organization. Now, how do you retain a talent? There is this real productivity loss, and that is kind of evident annually from what we have seen based on our own research. You have a productivity loss globally of $1 trillion because you have burnout, you have wellness-related issue within your employee base. So how do you fix all of that? So, we are taking wellness at workplace. We are focusing more on burnout management programs. We are focusing more on retaining talent, because these are the threats that is not obvious to people. Maybe to some it is, but this is closer to home. The supply chain is kind of far away from me right now, right? But if I don't retain talent, I won't have people who will be able to tell me, okay, you know what, we have a supplier who's exposed to A, B, and C, right? So that is something that we have to focus on.
Yeah.
And we need, this is something that keeps changing. This is what I will call the unknown knowns. And it keeps changing, it keeps evolving. And you need to understand that you will make mistakes, and it's okay to make mistakes. You will screw up. And the whole idea is to adapt. I mean, you will fall, but the idea is not about focused on falling, but more about, do you have the resilience to get up quickly and run and recover from that? Because, a lot of these companies have made mistakes as well during pandemic and all of those things. Now, assessing the threat also means being prepared. So being prepared in a way to not be in that mindset that you will never make these mistakes again. No, I don't think so. Being prepared for me means, yes, you will find yourself in that sticky situation, but how fast can you recover? And if you can recover faster than the others, for example, your peers, then you will stay ahead, and then you will become sustainable in your goals. And as a business also, I would call it more the resilience model, but it needs to be adaptive. It needs to be focused on all of those things. So that's probably what I think as a business, that's what we face today, because the obvious is obvious. Everybody's focusing on it while not focusing on it as well, because you think you tick the box, okay, I've done this, I've done that, I've done this. And then you realize, how the hell did I get stuck in the Ukrainian war? And you say, well, okay, you didn't map out your entire supply chain, as everybody was saying. So, as a business leader, what can you do? You just smile and you say, hey, I made mistakes, and now let's learn and let's adapt and let's learn quickly and move forward. So that's what we've been doing, really. And, you need to also focus on, okay, now I need to go have wellness at my workplace. Make sure I support the burnout program. And, slowly you become, you learn so much about burnout, you think maybe I'm burned out myself. So all of these are real threats.
Great. I completely agree. I think, sometimes looking closer to where we are also matters, and especially with the, a lot of larger organizations currently firing, job security is definitely a concern area for organizations. Yes. Okay. Let me do one more round of quick questions. We have about a minute or two. I'll request the panelists to take a minute or two to answer, and I'll start with, again, same order. Wasim, my question to you would be, see, you mentioned about organizations managing third-party risk management and cyber threats. And with each region, suppose an organization who is working in 5 different geographies in Southeast Asia or APAC, and they have to manage new compliances, new regulations of each different geography, and it becomes much more troublesome for them. So what are your practical ways organizations are currently doing it, or do you believe they're still struggling with this aspect of managing new compliance and regulation, especially for a company which is there in 5 different parts of the world?
No, this definitely is a challenge. And then if you are a global company, that it adds the complexity. But at the same time, I see that as an opportunity as well, that because you can have, because one thing that I missed earlier, because what we need to do, we need to plan for the stressed exit. Sometimes they use this terminology as a stressed exit or the vendor lockout. What happened, like if your critical vendor goes bankrupt, and it could be any reason, it could be financial, it could be because of the cyber attack or anything. It's not in their control anymore. They were resilient, everything was there. So you need to plan that if your vendor goes belly up, then what you're gonna do. So now having a global, and then in case if for the same services or for the same product, if you have similar vendors in different regions, that present you an opportunity as well. So yes, compliance is a challenge. They have to comply with the different regulations, but at the same time, I see that most of these regulations are similar.
Okay.
Yes, but you have to make sure that like, for example, for ESG, it's going to be similar everywhere. Resilience. Now we have so many frameworks of continuity and resilience, but again,
more or less the same.
If you have that framework in place globally and centrally, then you have implemented to all your locations. So definitely, so you need to plan well. So my key message or my last message would be think holistically, and that's how you can cater all these challenges.
Okay, great. I'll move to Julian now. Julian, today, we were speaking earlier, probably not today, but 2 days earlier, that vendors are always worried and stressed about multiple audits they have to carry out, right? From a client side, they're saying there is a physical security related survey or an audit done, and a health and safety guy comes and does another audit, and a cyber or an information security guy comes and does another. How can clients enable vendors so that this overhead on their side can be reduced, because it's an effort intensive activity from both sides, and most importantly, it takes up time which could be used in other productive things. So probably your thoughts on that would be really appreciated.
Sure. So what we did is this, we took a pragmatic approach, right? And over the years, we have improved and we have presented to the board our findings. What we realized is that multiple functions at some point, a presentation was overlapping, right? So you talk about incident response, it is overlapping. You talk a little bit about the cyberspace, which has a physical component in it, that was overlapping. So just last year, what we did was we pulled together all the various functions. We said, let's do an integrated audit. We sat down, we reviewed our templates, and then we said, okay, here are the overlaps. These are the overlaps that we would then have a single function to perform. The rest, let's push forward and do your own separate functions, but as a group on the ground, physical audits. We were pragmatic because if you go to your legal department, you ask them about your contract manufacturers, your suppliers, there's something called a limited audit liability. What that means is that a supplier will only allow the company to audit them only a specific number of times a year. Of course, there are clauses to that. So that's why you need to integrate and go in and do those physical audits. With those findings, you then build a quarterly review with your suppliers so that you can then close the gaps on the risk. I mean, so that's kind of how we found our footing. We found it to be successful. And then what's more important is our suppliers didn't go through something called an auditor fatigue.
Yes, correct. But the great, I think for all the attendees is a great point. Looking at an integrated risk review, which includes all the risk parameters of physical health and safety and cyber, could be a great way to reduce the fatigue that is caused to vendor. Great point. Okay, now I move to Kagan. Kagan, specifically, for you, I have the question because we spoke about cyber attacks specifically on the physical security controls, and I'm sure most of the audience would love to hear what specific services and tools are available in the market which can help organization better mitigate these attacks on physical security controls specifically on. I'm focusing on that part here.
Yeah. So I think the key is really to harden the edge device so that the not so prone to the hackers to attack. So fortunately for large organization, they usually have a lot of resources to engage the IT expertise and you know, even embedded people to do all kinds of things like upgrade the camera firmwares, you know, changing the password constantly and all those stuff. But for smaller and mid scales of company, I think I think to meet the compliance, they have to move a lot of resources to make it happen. So the other part of things where a lot of people are talking is a zero trust policy, where you don't trust any device at all, whether they're transmitting the device or they're sitting at the rest. So those kind of things, I think more and more companies are looking into it to protect the device. I think the last 2 points for me is really to find the trustworthy device. There are many devices that in the market, but find those manufacturers that focus on a lot of cybersecurity protection. And lastly, the installer who help you to do the installation. Look for those that have foresight, where they see cybersecurity as part of the security, where even you can look for company that have ISO 27000. I think those kind of company typically is one of the sign where they're looking to do a lot of infosec, protect your properties and then all the device.
Thanks, Kegan, on that one. I will move to Dipayan, and Dipayan, my question from here, from zero trust, will move to paper trust in the supply chain world, right? We always talk about, no, we don't know the end supplier, and there are multiple paper trails that are there, and no, it is very difficult. This third, fourth, fifth, sixth, n number of parties are in between. So I believe there's a lack of a supply chain formal framework in place, risk management framework probably. What are your thoughts of how organization can build this framework and how they can finally know the end supplier for certain elements which will be critical for their function, right? Sometimes.
Look, I think it's a double-edged sword here, because at the same time, as I just mentioned that the situation of geopolitical situation does create this arbitrage for arbitrages, okay, where you actually sometimes you're creating this market to get a price arbitrage, right?
Correct.
And then if rest of your competitors are accessing this price arbitrage and you're not doing it, right, you're actually falling off from the radar there, of doing business. Now it's a very challenging thing. On one side, discovering the process of fourth, fifth, sixth counterparty and then try to protect your risk. That end of the day, it should not really land up as a product coming from a wrong country, right? The other way is applying the doctrine of indoor management and staying intentionally ignorant about the particular source, right? So I hope you understand what I'm referring to here.
Yes, absolutely understand.
So, that's the challenge people get into. If you remember my opening remarks, I did talk about technology is available. If you talk about artificial intelligence, blockchain platforms, they're there really to discover and find out. But the question is, are the companies, are the organizations are choosing to go with that directions or choosing to stay competitive in the market by staying ignorant about certain risk and in a very indirect way falling into that risk? So to answer your question, tools are there, it's the intent that matter.
Thank you for the insight. Okay, Sanjeev, over to you. Basically, my question would be, as you pointed out, right, people are a key asset for any organization. And if you see the organizations that have fired employees in the last past were known to be very people-centric, right? They used to give them best of assets, resources. You can come in shorts and work, and you can give anything that they want. They had a TT table and everything else in the office, right? A completely home environment in some cases. Now there's a surge again in the startup space, and there is a constraint in terms of skilled labor available for that. How do you foresee organizations moving ahead? Like, for example, yesterday India announced its budget and there was a lot of focus on skilled training that would be focused. So how do organizations now move forward with an objective of where money should go, right? Either it should go on like too much of supporting care or on skill improvement. Now, where do you believe organizations move forward in that aspect? Would be my question to you.
The funny problem that the CEOs of listed companies that we were talking about have is they have to worry about the shareholders. They have to worry about their stocks. They have to see what their stock is trading. For them, that's their biggest threat to their jobs and their dividends and all of those things. So, if the easiest thing is fire 10,000 people because you have cost saving, as simple as that. So investor will give you a thumbs up and your dividends is protected and all of those things, right? So, and how do you know? I mean, I joke with a couple of the guys I know personally. I said, so out of the 10,000 people you fired, how do you know everybody needed to be fired? They don't know. They just have no idea. Nobody has any idea. It's a wholesale firing. It's like, shooting blind and thinking, well, I just needed to shoot somebody because that's what my shareholders expect me to do. The problem is very complicated. We think we know what we are doing. We can hire advisors and we can do what people are expecting us to do. But intentions is visible through your actions, right? Now, what happens is, I think it's difficult to map out. Most likely, Googles of the world or Microsofts of the world will realize, hey, they got rid of talent, for example. Now, that talent may have started his or her own startup for some reason. And then that might be a blessing in disguise so what I call is value destruction. Unintentional value destruction. You think you create preserving the value, but in the name of preserving your value, you've destroyed the value that you created by investing yourself in your employees. As a business leader, you gave them the best coffee, you gave them the best hugs, you gave them the best of everything. And then you told them, F off, I don't need you because I have to protect my bottom line and all of these things. And plus, it's fancy thing to do these days because, just fire people is a fancy thing. Otherwise, people won't take you as a serious CEO. You didn't fire anybody? My God, you're not serious. And investors will probably not give you capital loss if you want to go raise capital. So the issue is, look, are you following the trend or do you understand the business? The most important thing I ask myself is, do I really understand my business? And how do you understand your business? You understand your business through your own people. You cannot have, if you're an organization, not a coffee shop, but you've been lucky enough to expand globally. How do you understand your business? Not through the spreadsheet. Numbers are only as good as people, right? People behind it. AIs are only as good as people behind it. So you will see AI bias. You will see all of these things. How do you filter that out? You need to filter that out using your own people because people will be able to give you perspective and you can sit down and say, hey, you know what? I didn't see that. Let's discuss it. Let's be prepared. And I would say, you should know that these are threats that is real, imminent, and you cannot bulletproof yourself. So it's always important for me is how prepared are we to come back? Because you will have to just keep coming back. That's what business is. Everything is designed to fail. Everything is designed to fail. Universe will fail. But the good thing about universe, it keeps coming back. Nature keeps coming back. So I learned from that. I say, hey, I need to keep coming back because I will get hit. So I need to be resilient. And for me, resilient is, my ability to adapt, evolve, and come back. And that's what I think I see that as preparedness.
Great insight. Prepared. Okay, I'll just close the our panel with probably one-liner snippet from each one of you as a parting thought to the audience. Again, with the same order, probably Wasim sir, we'll start from your side. So Wasim, any one-liner snippet you would like to say?
Oh, no, very quickly, because I think we are over.
Yeah, just about a couple of minutes over.
I said, think holistically, don't consider this as a tick box. So we need to plan well for the resilience, for the real sake of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Julian?
Yeah, hi. All I would say is from a security standpoint is if you intend to grow your security force, grow with purpose, grow understanding what you need. And I think like what everyone's alluding to is be human-centric. In the last 6 months, I've seen many of my colleagues burn out because they were just sheer overworked, right? So I think it's really look at your people and understand where the limits are and help them tailor that, because not everyone's going to come out and say, hey, look what, I'm burnt out. No one's going to come out and say that because it feels like I'm a loser if I say that, right? So no one is going to come out front and tell you that. So look for signs and actually speak. talk a lot more with your folks.
Yeah. Keegan?
Yeah. So mine will be re-evaluate all the risks that can, for people that can corrupt your security. So big and small, but assess it in the right way so that you know what to protect. And definitely cybersecurity is a main trait that we need to look after. Yeah.
Dipayan?
Risk are part of the business. Risk are not to be run away from. It's there to be managed. Vision, of course, matters, but the best risk managers are the best performers in the current world. That's my...
Very good, very good. Don't run away from risk. Accept it. Sanjeev, parting thought.
I think, you can't wish risk and threats to go away. It just doesn't work like that. I would say perspective and perceptions are two key component, and they're the two pillars. You should know you will make mistakes. You should know you have absolutely no total control. You can put in all what you want, but there will be things that are outside of your control, and those outside of your control will hit you. And you will think you can be better prepared, but next time you will get hit again. So the point is, just be relentless at learning. And if you're relentless at learning, you've equipped yourself and your business and your team to survive whatever comes your way. So, and keep a right perspective and perception about what risk is, what risk you can live with, what risk is manageable. And perspective is important because regardless of whatever system you put in, you will get hit. You will find yourself getting sucked in the black hole. You can't avoid it, but you need to make sure you have the capacity to come back.
Thank you. Great insights and fascinating inputs from everybody. I must say I have grown in stature with the knowledge shared by the panelists. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Julian, Wasim, Sanjeev, Dipayan, and Keegan for your time and inputs. Please do respond to the questions. There have been questions on technology, on supply chain, which have been on cyber, on the Q&A box. Happy to have your inputs there. With that, I hand it over back to Shreya, the next panelist from my boss. So I hope I have not pissed him off. Thank you so much. With that, let's move ahead and wishing everybody a great panel discussion, the next one as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much. And I'm just going to steal a quick comment from the chat section, which says facts only. And I think that's how exactly the panel discussion went. And thanks, Mitesh, the timekeeper's delight. And without wasting any time, we now come to our third and final panel discussion, which is led by the one and only, the king of cybersecurity domain. He is currently our CEO and co-founder at MitKat Global Consulting, and has led several high-profile and complex multi-dimensional risk consulting assignments with industry leaders across various verticals for more than 100+ blue-chip companies. So without further ado, sir, I hand it over to you.
Thank you, Shreya. And I noted that, Mitesh, I'll request all my panelists to switch on the cameras. Prasoon, Abhishek sir is there, Kundan, Rohit. And am I missing anyone? Yes, all are there. I can see Rohit. If you can switch on the camera, that would be really great. On that, right. So good afternoon, good morning to all. Prasoon, thank you for joining really early. I can see you were amongst the first ones to join. Thank you very much for that. And we have people logging on from various regions. Amazing insights. I'll just share my experience of last maybe 20 years of this is there. We have taken part in panels, so many, I have lost count of that. But most of the times, whenever we talk about panels and security, this thing, it is all about guarding. It's about what is happening, what about security. This was totally different. The people, the whole industry, and the questions which were there are also so mature. So I'm so thrilled and delighted that the entire industry is maturing so well. The participants, the panelists, everybody was talking at a very different level. The softer aspects of security, the future aspects of security, what what are things which are going to hamper us and what do we need to do? Nobody was talking about reduce number of guards or do automation. All these things are passé. I think these are all given and people are doing most of the things which are there. So it was immensely, I think, satisfying to listen to so many experts and talking about so different things. And yes, I like that what they said that if anything happens in one side, or what the example was given was if a supply chain sneezes, the entire world will have a fever. I think it is applicable to all the things which are happening. So things are so interconnected that everything will have an impact on all of us, whichever region we are operating from, whichever business sector we are operating from. With that kind of a context, let me first introduce the panel. We always saved the best for the last. So I'll just very quickly introduce the panelist. In no particular order, we have Rex Lam from Hong Kong. He's a senior consultant of Guardian Forest Security Limited. Rex is active in the Asia Pacific area and providing independent security consultation services, including risk assessment, policy, procedure, design, audits, investigation. He's a go-to man for you if you have any requirement on security consulting. Also, we have Kundan. Kundan Shekhawat has more than 2 decades. You don't look that old, Kundan, but you said I'll take it at what you've written, almost 2 decades plus of experience. He is a CEO of Risk and Resilience B2B SaaS product company, Ascent, and he has experience in FIS, Microsoft Liquid before founding Ascent. He has a vision of creating a SaaS firm. Went through various iterations of finding market fit. He has executed a well-drawn product and market strategy in Asia and Middle East and has it for a future expansion. All the best for that. And of course, North Africa remains your hub. We also have Abhishek Kumar. He's a Vice President Regional RCSO Asia Pacific at MasterCard. Information security professional with 2 decades plus of diverse experience across information security governance, security operations, risk management, IT audit. I think I can go on and on, but essentially he can answer all your questions you have on this in this space, which is there. His areas prior to MasterCard, he has worked with Bank of America as global information security, and before that at Wipro as manager of risk and compliance. Welcome, Abhishek, sir, on this panel. We also have from London, Prashant Dixit, CBCI, again, a poster boy of Indian security industry. Congratulations, Prashant, for that. Head of safety and security at Oxford University Press. More than 2 decades of experience, proven track record of delivering world-class personal protection, corporate security, crisis management services. Also, he has also worked with Fidelity International as head of global security and Reliance Industry as assistant manager. Not last, but not the least, actually, we have Rohit Srivastava. He's the founder of Bharatverse. I have his shortest introduction, which is only 2 lines, but I know I can talk about, I think, hours about him and the amount of work he has done in the cybersecurity domain. In that, currently he is Bharat Ka Metaverse. He's a founder of that. He's also author of various books, and basically he works as VC and also founder of many companies. He's a very, very active member at TIE Mumbai. And mentoring a lot of startups. He likes to spend his time and money invest. He has made a lot of money, trust me, in startups. So if you want his money, then you may have to start a startup on that. With that, I would like to come back to our panelist on that. Maybe as I said, most of the talks have been about the big picture, the geopolitics, what has changed, supply chain risk. We will talk more specifically about the problems which most of the organizations are facing, the technology, the collaboration, the convergence risk, how the future looks like. So most of the talks have been on the past. I would urge most of our panelists to talk about how the future looks like and what are the issues which we are going to face. On that thing, maybe I'll start with Prasoon first. Because most of the other countries are growing at a good pace. But if you say UK is going in a very so the expectations are growing from the risk, and then the security team and the economy is going down. And the budget cuts are happening across as we see, which is there. So in this kind of a recession kind of a scenario and high or a very fast adoption of technology, which we are seeing across industries, which are happening. How do you see as a security team, risk teams? We have to look very candidly and very, very objectively the adoption of technology from the risk prism. How do you see these things are changing, and what challenges do you see we are facing in this across the globe, maybe region-wise on that?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Pawan, and nice to see you as always. I think there are a few things, and I was listening to all the previous panels, and a lot of focus was go back to basics. If you prepare, you plan well, and your foundation is strong, then technology is, in the last 10 years, we have seen dramatic changes from social media to cloud to AI to big data, and lots and lots of integration. Hardware, technology started from hardware, then integration, and now it is more about AI and smart technologies. So from a regional perspective, I think it's a very technology is the only thing which is growing, and sustainability is again a challenge in technology sector because of innovation. So the core is, as long as we work hard, and any technology is as good as the end user. If the end user is not aware what needs to be done, and you are not aware about your business needs, as well as how you collaborate, not internally but also externally, because there is a lot of reliance on external partners. And I'm talking about not only external partners in terms of people who are enabling your business or supporting your business, but also when it comes to civil authorities, when you're talking with civil authorities, what regulations they have. Many of the countries, they don't allow work from home when the pandemic was there. Taiwan is a hot topic throughout this panel discussion, but when pandemic hit and people wanted to work from home, they didn't allow because they don't have policy. So that means it shows how the governments are prepared. Most of the governments were not prepared. But when we see from the different angle and you change the focus toward the West was quite prepared, but they never anticipated that it is coming to them. That pandemic will ever hit Western world. But it's not only about pandemic, it is also about pre-pandemic and after pandemic. So pandemic, let's forget about pandemic for a while, because we have learned a lot through the pandemic, but now it is what next? What is coming next? Geopolitical, geoeconomics factors are there, but what about the manpower? Workforce has changed drastically, and people are not going to do the business they are doing today. You may not know, if I'm doing security today, I will be in the security business tomorrow. So that's the thing which we have changed. We have seen from airline industry to the hotel industry, people are doing multi-dimensional work. They are upgrading themselves. I think Sanjeev has mentioned in the previous panel that your journey of study and learning should not stop. Same thing, it is also about we as a, I will not call it risk leaders. We are also a business leader, because whatever we do is the core business. And earlier we were the audience, now we are on the table. So we sit, we interact with C-suite quite regularly. So I think it is also about how you educate, how you collaborate with the senior leadership, what trust factor you grow, and trust needs to be earned. And it can only be earned once you are doing the right things, plus keeping everybody close. So that's my take. High level.
I think great initial thought, Prasoon. I like the statement that yes, for many years, in India, we are still struggling to make physical security managers, risk managers. You already moved to business managers. So I think, yeah, we have the roadmap is very, very clear where we need to move ahead on, and it's a great insight on that thing. I'll move to Abhishek. I think the tech companies are the hot seat of for all good, bad, ugly reasons of maybe mass layoffs. So maybe they are the bad side of regulators, NGOs, citizen groups. So many things are happening, and then you want to do so many things which are good. Maybe it is convenience. Sometimes the security becomes an issue. Sometimes privacy. Sometimes the country. So many issues which are happening, and compliance is becoming a core. I think whomsoever I'm talking to as risk managers, they are spending disproportionate time in compliance. rather than doing operations. That is a common, I'll say, the thing which is happening. So what do you see? What is your advice, or what is your view from the other side, that how does the compliance is going to grow, and how serious that I'll say as a domain it is, and what do we need to do as risk managers on that?
Thanks for the question. So I think you've very rightly said, one thing we know for sure is that this compliance regime will only increase, right? It will increase, and the moment you find one large country or one large region pick up a particular law or a particular statute which caters to address security, or tries to protect the national interests, you will find other countries following suit, right? So it's a standard thing that we have seen, and it in the last 4 to 5 years this has improved or rather increased drastically. I think when it comes to compliance requirements, there is just no way out. You have to comply, right? You have to be compliant to the law of the land. But what will help, as a lot of our panelists have said before, what is in your control is how you prepare for it, right? What happens you really can't control, but the way you respond, the way you react totally depends on how well you prepare for it. So I think having a forward-looking approach, seeing as much as possible, work with regulators, work with government agencies, build that partnership, build that trust, and try to get a seat in the whole policy decision space. There are times when a lot of government bodies, they come out with request for comments, RFC comments on the draft regulations that are being thought of or being planned, and that's where I think industry as a whole has an opportunity to participate, share their point of view, and I won't say not that necessarily influence, but basically put forward a pragmatic approach which meets the intent of the regulation or the law that's coming out, but at the same time is also business friendly, right? So that always can be a middle path, but it's how well that handshake happens between the industry and the governing bodies. Data privacy, when you're talking of data privacy, we are aware of the PDPA that's coming up. A lot of countries across, especially in the Asia region, are coming up with different requirements. Australia recently came up with their risk management practices for critical infrastructure and critical infrastructure support. So these things will happen as we move on. The other piece, I think, that organizations and industry should collectively think of is the compliance requirements will be a mandate, so you will have to comply. As I said earlier, there's no way out. You will have to comply to it. But that's where having a very pragmatic approach in terms of looking at, say, if I'm looking at, say, a data requirement which is being rolled out, how do I ensure that I have minimal data needs within my ecosystem? Do I really need the 20 data sets, or can I still manage my work with 10 data sets, right? So once we bring in that approach where we are looking at really what is needed, what we need to protect. Again, I'm talking purely from a data standpoint as of now. You will get a path ahead in terms of what needs to be done as we plan for these regulations to come out. One last thing, just to sum up my conversation, we've seen technology risks come out heavily. I mean, there is we're talking of cybersecurity threats, we're talking of data breaches, this accelerated technology innovation and adoption. Right from the previous panelists already spoke about the different technologies that we're seeing. There will be emergence of quantum computing, which will be highly disruptive, is what I personally feel. And I think we need to gear up to be ready to respond to a situation where technology risk is like ubiquitous. It's out there. Supply chain, I think not much to add. Our previous panelists already have spoken a lot about it. Absolutely. But one other piece is the talent shortage. I think fully agree with the previous panelists. Talent shortage will hit us hard, not just for cybersecurity, but technology in general. Because we have so many new technologies coming in, you need people to run those technologies. And unless people are skilled and unless people have that mindset, it might become a major risk going forward.
Absolutely. I think when we look at a technology risk, we only look at technology as a risk, but who is going to make the technology? If you don't have people to, that itself is a big risk. Thank you for that great insight. I think I'll just move on from that, Abhishek, to Kundan on that. That you're seeing a drastic shift in the resiliency. I think a few years back you must be struggling to educate people on resiliency is important. You should do it. Now every CXO is talking about resiliency. Resiliency is a buzzword for every talk you see about any CXO. Resiliency always features into that, which is there. And the meaning of the BCP has drastically changed in few years. Maybe what has been your journey and what has been your view? What do you think currently we are at in terms of BCP? Because earlier it was 200 pages which was given and a lot of things were there. All those things are passé because things are changing so fast in terms of regulations, in terms of even events which are happening. So what's your view, Kundan, on that? So how has it changed maybe very quickly? And what is going to change in future? If you say maybe next 2, 3, 5 years, how the BCP, or I'll say BCP is a very nowadays a taboo word. So how does the organization resiliency will look like in future?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Morning, afternoon. Pawan, thank you first of all for having me here and the following year as well. I know last year we touched upon on some of the aspects, and great to be among the eminent panelists. So from the journey and the background that I personally have had from business continuity management to IT disaster recovery and crisis management, I think, we did touch upon pandemic is over, long over now. And the trends and the challenge with the business leaders talk about any CTO and the CIO, they are also pseudo risk leaders, risk managers. It is not just the chief risk officers or the executive officers. The technology leaders have equally more responsibility, and they are being put into situations. Cloud wasn't adapted so well before pandemic. Now we see every platform application going on cloud. Largely the organizations are running on cloud. If not, they have to have a path towards it. And if I were to break this down into what's happening in the Middle East, or probably I may not be that closer to what's down in Southeast Asia, but with the trends in India, North America, and the Middle East look very different. The adoption of the entire technology in the region, which is extended from Middle East to Africa, is happening very, very fast. It's going, to the highest level of digitization focus all across, whether we talk about risk management in totality and what risk management, and call it as a governance, risk compliance, or the pseudo, which we used to be a BCP or a BCM, is all leading towards a resilience management. So this journey of a resilience management is, even if you look at in the organization today, we have a CISO, there's incident managers, there is the internal operational risk setting if we are a bank, there are other emergency responders. So everything is lying in silos. And what the trend in technology and the challenge to the tech leaders is, how do you bring all of it together and have a holistic view to how the resilience management would need to be achieved from a top down, and now is demanded by the shareholders. It is the core essence of a top management's focus. Earlier, pre-pandemic, the biggest challenge was to make somebody realize this is important. Now that's changed. It is like, the solution providers would run after getting a buy-in, getting budget, but it's vice versa. I think there are budgets that people are spending money, and also there's a management focus. It's again the same mindset of people who say, oh God, we survived. And they say, we survived, but let's not land up again in a situation. So the entire outlook and the journey of a resilience is, I think there's serious attention to detail in making things happen, where we talk about either a cloud, the information security elements of it, the risk management part of it, talk about crisis management. And then of course, the underlying principles of continuity and crisis management are all probably embedded into the entire framework. Now, this framework may be termed as a GRC, or say a risk analytics driven solutions and engines that can play a part in that. And that's a similar journey that I have personally taken. We have as a firm, or as a mid-sized firm servicing little less than 100 large enterprises We work closely with the CEOs and the CTOs, and there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to give it back and share experiences cutting across different verticals. And I think Prasun talked about the regulators. Across the board, we've seen the regulators also learning fast. They're also picking the trend, and they're wanting to learn from what organizations are facing, whether they're technology leaders or the business leaders. I think there's a very less difference nowadays we're seeing between who business leaders and who technology leaders are. And that convergence is starting to happen, where risk is not just the risk officer's problem. It is equally a technology problem now. So with that, I think I'd pass it back to you.
I think you echo the thoughts which I think Prasun and Vishek both were mentioning about. Let me just change the flow slightly. Let me move to Rex on this part of thing. So a lot of technology adoption is happening. A lot of IoT devices are coming in, millions and billions. I heard in the earlier panel, I think some 2.67 trillion of edge devices are going to be there in the world, and that is amount of money which is going to be spent on that in few years' time. So that gives us a lot of exposure, a lot of risks to organizations. And as we were discussing in earlier panel, third, fourth, fifth, sixth level of vendors, and the risks there is never ending. So how, as a company, when you are helping a lot of companies, where does the reality lies? Because it is never ending. How much ever you do on security is never going to be enough. So what enough is enough for the assurance of a company, and what should we do as priorities when we are expanding? You're on mute.
I just unmute myself.
Yes.
Thank you, Pawan. Thanks for including me in this panel. It's an honor to be here. Thanks for all the honorable panelists. The conversation that when I'm consulting my clients, I often hear they will say, "Oh, what do we need to do? Are we investing enough in cybersecurity, physical security? Can you do a vulnerability analysis? What else can we do?" I always try to talk to the client that's not a correct place to start a conversation. What I usually do is I try to talk to the client, try to make them understand that understanding where your assets are, it's the first step, because assets is what enable your business to operate, and at the end of the day, make a profit. So, and it takes a while for them to be able to get on board. The next thing is try to hold their hands, understanding where the assets are, and they like to bring in a consultant and trust the consultant, but I always tell them the answers you already have. It's in your people. So my job usually it's not to collect all the answers, but more like a facilitator, ask the right questions so that, for example, I'm recently consulting a hotel chain. So I talk to the room directors, I talk to the customer service people, front desk, where do you store all your assets? And slowly and surely, we pick out where our important assets are. And be it information about your clients, your hotel guests, be it processes. And after that, we try to understand your digital footprints. And you talk about IoTs. In my opinion, IoT, it's not that different from any other hosts that we have been having for a very long time. I think the only difference is they are less powerful and they are easily forgotten, and they don't gain a lot of attention by the manufacturer, that if they can get a lot of updates, frequent updates, unlike, we all use Microsoft Windows, they have a very robust way of telling you, you should patch this, you patch that. With IoT, I don't think we're there yet. So long story short is there's no shortcut if you have a lot of IoTs in your organization, there's no shortcut. You have to have a clear inventory of what you have and a clear policy and procedures to manage those, just like you manage all your IT assets. And we talk about all these basic hygiene, change your password, patch your systems, train your users. I think the difficult part, it's not to change the password, because changing is very easy, but how to maintain that effort through generations of security people. Because in my experience, a lot of security leadership, they sometimes change jobs every 1 to 3 years. And when the new guy comes in, it's kind of hard for them to pick up. And a lot of things get lost in the transition. So one other thing I try to put out there is simplicity. Simplicity, it's an underrated virtue. If you have a simple, well, not simple, but a lean and mean policy and procedures, it helps the work that was done before to survive into the future, and you don't keep on redoing things all over again. One other experience I can share with you is I consult for a data centers in Hong Kong. It's not very large. It's a 5-building data center. I do risk assessment for them every 2 years, and what's sad about it is my recommendation kind of stays the same, 90%, as like every 2 years. I kept saying the same thing. I feel bad charging them to keep saying the same thing, but that's what happened. And there's a reality that we are facing is their priority, it may not be put in the right place, because they in their mind they're oh, maybe I'm changing job in 2 years, and so the security manager may not be that interested. And on top of that, there is senior management who are controlling the resources that can actually carry out the mitigation on those recommendations. They themselves are thinking about they might change job every 2 years. So it's a reality that security professional that we have to realize. But we can't change that part of the world. What we can do is to put simplicity back into the equation.
Thanks, Rex. I think that reminds me of, I'll take a very quick anecdote of 15 seconds, Rex. We do a data center audit in India. We don't do it in every 2 years. We do 5 times a year, 4 by clients and 1 by clients itself for the same data center. And we are happy to get that business. We don't want to lose that business. That's why I'm not going to name that. And it happens always. So with the same report goes multiple times. Yeah. Let me move on to, I think, great points, Rex. Move on to Rohit. Yeah, he's been quiet and smiling on various names when we are talking about quantum and all those things. So I'll ask you a very long question. I need a very short answer on that. What do you think is future of security?
So that's indeed a short question.
The future of security risk and what are the risks on that? Yeah.
So Pawan, that's a very short question, but the answer is going to be very long, and it's a very, very short and sweet question. Okay, so predicting the future of information security risk is challenging as new threat and vulnerability constantly emerge. However, some of the information security risks are listed below. I'm reading from ChatGPT. I entered this question there, and I got the answer. So you don't need a panelist, you can get the answers from ChatGPT. But I would like to highlight 6 points which ChatGPT itself responded as a back answer. First one, no one touched in my panel right now, was AI and ML based attack. Second, IoT, Rex spoke about it, the IoT getting part of the infrastructure and becoming your attack vector. Third is cloud security risk, spoken about. Fourth is ransomware attack, because it is so popular, it will always come in every prediction and every future thing. Fifth is quantum computing attack. I heard that as well coming into the conversation. So see, panelists have been talking what ChatGPT has been recommending as next future attacks.
one of the most important thing it spoke about is about social engineering attack. And that let's expand it even from what I heard from previous panelists as well. Human aspect is going to be one of the biggest challenge. So when we look at all the technology and the fancy new security solutions coming out in industry from variety of vendors, almost everyone make sure that they write in their product brochure that their product is AI ML enabled. So that's how people are moving, that okay, my product is AI ML enabled. The HI is the most important thing which gets missing. HI is the human intelligence which gets missing in most of the cases. You may have the fanciest of the product and biggest of the budget to spend on it, unless until the human who is managing it, who is configuring it, is knowledgeable in that area, the problems will keep continuing. I help a lot of companies as a virtual CISO, you spoke about in the introduction as well. So I'm talking about a large airline versus a small startup, a 30 people company. Major problem is not to give them a technical answer or technical solution. The major problem from my point of view, I've seen, and I call it always as an HR problem. The large airline, the global airline, this company has a problem that two teams do not talk to each other because they feel threatened with each other. So they have consultant like us who listen from one angle, give it to the other guy, listen from the first guy, give it to the second. The smaller company, again, HR issue, the IT head or the security, whoever is managing the security, feels that, oh, if there is too much to do, it would start showing up that he's not aware of all of that and will start getting stuck into things. And then his value in the organization will start going down. Complex solutions, complex situations, so they make it even more complex from that angle. Just take an example of the ransomware, and even ChatGPT says it's a bigger problem. I work with a lot of incident responders, and on my last trip to Europe, I spoke to some of the very large incident responders and asked them just one question. While you're doing a ransomware investigation, can you give me stats of an organization who has deployed 100% plain and simple a EDR solution? It could be anyone. They said, we have not seen even a single case of ransomware where the EDR was deployed 100%. So is it rocket science? No. Is it a very costly solution? Maybe, depending on what you're picking up. What lacks? And I asked them, what is lacking? They said, the lack is, oh, we have got 90% of our PCs covered and that's good for us. Oh, we have got all the endpoints covered, but the vendor of the database of the ERP solution says not to install onto the database, and that's we have not done. And that's where the attack happens. So ultimately, the problem is still coming back to the human who has been managing and deploying. This particular aspect of vendor saying something that, oh, a large database manufacturer, the name itself will be obvious to you guys. The vendor service guy has said, oh, please don't install antivirus on this machine because I don't know what will happen to the database performance. Once you get those kind of answers, that's where it takes you towards the weakness of an organization, and that will remain. Come AI/ML, come IoT, come any of these things. Till the time your basic is strong, till the time your basic hygiene is maintained, you will not be attacked much. You will be one of the lower target and people will be going to other. Everybody talks about we need regulation, we need privacy, we need all of that. Okay, all of that will keep following. People are asking for regulations in Web3 world and metaverses. People are talking regulations in IoT. People are asking for regulation in privacy. Regulation have always done a catch-up job. They will come. But if your basic understanding of the setup is strong, you would go safe and you would go happy. That's what from my point.
Great point. Very, very interesting point of view. I'll come back to you, Rohit. We have 10 more minutes, so we'll be 12 more minutes. So very quick round of questioning to all with the same order. I'll start with Prasoon. Again, as I said, you're sitting in the maybe wrong place. GDPR in this world is not looked very, very favorably on that thing. And we are talking about AI/ML. The fundamental of AI/ML about is free flowing data. GDPR is the other way around. So it is in contradiction to each other. Maybe my knowledge may be less on that, but I feel that if you don't get data to AI or ML, the algorithms are not going to be learning if you don't give data. And by GDPR, you can't give data. So it's a sort of a contradiction, and that contradiction is going to grow as we go in the times to come. So how do you see this kind of a balancing act? So everybody talks about AI, ML, but sharing of data is a taboo. So how do we go about it? It's a very, very confusing thing for me, at least, on that.
Yeah, so GDPR doesn't say that sharing of data is a challenge. What they say is whenever you're managing, the moment you start playing with data or touching the data in any way or form, you should be super careful in terms of who's going to manage, how you're going to source, why you're sourcing it, and who all will have an access, and how you're going to process it. And after you have processed it and the data has been used, how you're going to either delete the data or burn the data, whatever. So these are the key component. So GDPR in no sense is saying that you should not be an enabler. Basically, they are enabling you in a much more in a much more standard format, which is checked and which is trusted, and that's how and I think they set the tone for regional players, global players. That's the reason, no wonder each and every country is coming up with their own regulations, their own standards. So I think this is the core. And the key, the key of any business is you can't ignore the risk. You need to acknowledge the risk, adapt it, and embrace it, but play it carefully.
Well, I think thanks a lot, because a lot of people here think GDPR or what any regulations works against the technology which is there. So thanks for clarifying that, and it's so good to know your views on that. I think a lot of learning from that and insights. And coming to Abhishek on that. So much of data handled by your company, and this thing is there, and it's all about data. It's only the data transfer which happens. And in earlier panel also we talk about the vendors. The data goes to third, fourth, fifth, sixth kind of a layer. Now we are talking about 6-level vendor risk management also, and various companies. It's just a mammoth thing, and it is a never-ending kind of a thing, because anybody can have a one bad day and data can go out, kind of a thing. So that in this kind of an environment, which has so many vulnerabilities, how do you maybe balance it out, the investments? How do you get vendors to that level, kind of thing? So how do you run the entire vendor risk management programs on that?
Sure. So I think on the supply chain, we've had a lot of inputs shared by the previous panelists, and I think Deepan and Wasim really talked about a lot of very important spaces. I'll touch upon some of the areas which I think are equally important, and they actually supplement what was said earlier. So number one, it starts with having a robust and effective security controls built into your entire supply chain program. Right? We've talked about third party. TPRM is typically the word that has been used. I think that needs to be changed now. It should just be VRM, or vendor risk management. Thinking of exercises around supply chain disruption is something that I think is important. Here at Mastercard, we have tested it with one of our very large critical supplier. So if something goes wrong, what redundancy and what alternate and backup plans you have. So we have typically done BCP exercises largely within the organization, with the organization departments. But I think it's time to now take it forward and ahead, I would say, and include even your, at least to start with, the critical vendors into your exercises, and a very simulated exercises so that you can see end to end of what the impact could be. The other is building redundancy at a design level, especially for critical suppliers, again, making sure that you do not end up relying on just one provider or just one service feature. So like in DCs, when we build DCs, we always talk of dual line redundancies and redundancies at what level. We need to start thinking something similar on vendors as well. finance might typically come back saying that, it is not optimized, you're increasing compliance cost. But at the same time, you're actually trying to protect the business, right? So I think that lens has to be taken into picture. In terms of data that is handled through your vendor ecosystem, having clear line of sight in terms of your data elements, the way it is flowing from your organization to the outside of vendor, the vendor space, and also what is coming in from there. I think that is another important area. And last but not the least, having strong documentation, at least when it comes to contractual obligations with your vendors, making sure that they are obligated to maintain the level of safety, security which is needed, whether it is mandated by a regulation or by a statute or whether the company's policies. So I think these together and collectively will help us to be better prepared.
So I think thanks. I think amazing. Really like the clarity of thought in that process. Thanks a lot for that. Just moving on the same point to Kundan on that thing. How do you think because it's all about what Abhishek also mentioned this about testing the resilience plans and doing a lot of exercises on that thing. So how do you see things? Earlier it was more tabletop and people were used to join in a room and scenarios were planned. But now how are we doing it more practically using tools, actual scenarios, or maybe multi-locations kind of a thing? How do you think things are changing and becoming, the tests are becoming more pragmatic, practical, and more result oriented by using the newer technologies like your tool or other things on that?
I'll probably take a step back at the data part of it, just from a regulatory standpoint. If you look at, the commonly around the global risk being attributed to technology, third-party supply, premises, and people, right? Data from a regulatory standpoint has never been part of the risk elements until now. Just recently, Bank of England, with the new regulation in operational resilience, calls out data as a separate outside of technology. Now that lays an emphasis and a complete focus on the data privacy element, the compliances, and all of that. So that is just a side part of it. Now going deeper into the tabletop and the crisis simulation, and every organization on a quarterly, monthly basis running, these are simulated injections that you do saying, what if this happens, or what if scenarios. Now, the moment you try and do what if in a very manual intensive way, one crisis doesn't end up just being that crisis. One would lead into multiple peripherals of the crisis that will go in there. So from a platform standpoint, the moment you try and bring down a location and say, this location is down, what does it happen? It's a percolating effect downwards at multiple levels, which are unforeseen and unknown of, which cannot be interpreted or analyzed just by a human behavior. You don't know the unknowns until you simulate it to a maximum level, the nth level at the ground zero, saying this is what is going to go wrong. What we have done is on the platform, when we say a larger resilience platform, the entire tabletop and a simulation is run automated. Pick up a scenario and it percolates down to what process goes down, who are the people affected, what are the interdependencies into that, what kind of an external third-party dependencies go to that. So it creates a heat map and you click down and say, at the click of a button, you see everything in a snippet of it. That same analysis would be done in a couple of hours if it was to done manually, or a couple of days. And that is the time that you lose in your recovery strategies as an organization trying to simulate a tabletop or a call tree or some sort of an exercise, which is a good exercise, but does it yield the same results as something more granular, deeper? Would not. So those are some of the experiences that we've been carrying, and they are auto run in a larger extent.
More and more adoption of these kind of things are happening on.
Yes, quite a lot. Intense.
Do you think are taking a lead in this thing?
Sorry?
Which regions are taking a lead in this?
I think from a regional standpoint, we see prominence in the Middle East, very strong prominence on that side, especially a few countries out here going very aggressive in doing that, preparing for the worst of the scenarios. So is India. There is a trend in India as well, which is picking it up. North America, still, we do say that technology is at the highest level, but no, I think there is still the traditional way of how a crisis management and IT disaster recovery or a BCM management is run. They're still independent because the system are so difficult that it's very hard to bring it all together. Whereas in the Southeast Asia or India and the Middle East, the adoption came later. So now they're taking a jump ahead and trying to adopt with the support of technology.
Thanks, Kundan. I think I very quickly move to Rex, and we have only a few minutes left, Rex. Very quickly on a lot of talk happened on convergence in the earlier panels also of physical and cyber, which is happening globally. Is it a talk or is it really happening on ground?
Well, you see my background is ASIS. We are a advocate of what we call enterprise security risk management. What that means is we are advocating that under one leadership, that role, however you want to call it, it has to take care of security from all disciplines. So traditionally, physical security, investigations, digital forensics, cybersecurity, IT network, you name it, they have limited communications. Sometimes not deliberately, sometimes are intended because of job security, because of mistrust amongst departments, and I am seeing most people, fortunately, most people are embracing the change, and a small amount of people they're pushing back. And I truly think that if we don't embrace that change, you're gonna be left in the dust. And in Hong Kong in particular, or in APAC, I am seeing more companies adopting that approach with one leadership, and it doesn't matter what kind of security discipline it's reporting to that one leadership. And that's very important because on the defensive side, if you're not doing it, on the offensive side, the criminals, they have no boundaries. Everything goes. And they have all the good people there because there are a lot of profits that are up for grabs. So if the good guys don't keep up, the bad guy is going to win. So I think with the 3-year pandemic, I think we're in better shape. And in terms of when we first started having the pandemic, a lot of new tools are being introduced into the workplace, at home, and people are less careful. But nowadays, I think our awareness in general is a lot higher.
Sorry, just cutting. Sorry, I think you've got the point. I think, yeah, it is happening, and yes, not at the pace which we want to be, but yes, things are moving on that. Sorry, just shortage of time, so I'm just moving to the last, but not the most important question. I think, Rohit, how do you see in the metaverse in 2 years, 5 years time, how the entire thing will move, and how do you see it is going to change the way we work and the newer risks which are going to come?
Nothing much.
Nothing much.
It's the same old wine in a new bottle. The web was slow, then web became faster, and now the web has become immersive.
Okay.
The basic of security will always remain. The basic of problem will always remain. Your identity theft will be something else, bigger identity theft. Your data leakage would always be there. All of the basic problem will always be there. And all of the learnings from Web 2 and Web 1 will always help you in your Web 3.
Thanks. I think that cannot be a more crisper answer. So I must apologize to all the participants. I tried to move all the panelists to talk about technology, but everybody moved to human. So that shows how it is important on that. And on a serious note, I think that is all about. So it's not about technology. As we think about technology as an enabler, but it is all going to be people, and that is what I would like to end this panel at. And thank you very much for great insights for all the panelists. Thank you very much. Back to you, Shreya.
Thank you so much, sir, and thank you very much to all the speakers for a fantastic conversation. Always interesting. Without wasting any time, I'd now like to invite Ms. Aparna Gudar. She is the Associate Director of the Predictive Risk Intelligence team at MitKat Advisory to sum up and deliver a vote of thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shreya, and thank you, everyone. We are running short of time, so I will be very quick. It has been a very, very enriching session, and I have made 1,000 notes here, but I don't think we have the time to sum up everything. What I would like to do is, first of all, thank you so much to all our panelists. It has been amazing listening to all of you, and we sincerely thank you for taking out the time from your busy schedule to speak to all of us who look up to you as mentors. So thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you so much for responding to all the questions and sharing talking about your experiences. Second, I would really like to thank everybody all the participants who have joined us today, and those of you who have stayed with us. It's your enthusiastic participation that helps us, and it energizes us to do more. I have also been a participant today, and as a participant, I would like to thank MitKat for taking this initiative and coming up with wonderful seminars and programs and reports that that increase our knowledge base so much more. Since it won't be possible for us to speak about everything that we have discussed today, we will be coming up with a report. So for those of you who are interested in having a document which gives you the key learnings of this session, please do contact Kunal. His contact details are in the chat box. Most of you will know him. So Kunal Solanki would be our coordinator for if you require the document with us. So very quickly, I will just speak about the key points. First of all, the event started with a very powerful keynote address by Mr. Nikhil Gokhale, and he just set the right context by giving an overview of all the key developments and how they are likely to pan out in 2023. This was followed by unveiling of APAC risk review. We apologize for the technical issues that we faced during the unveiling, but it is a must-read document, and if you require access for the same, you can have a complimentary copy, and you can reach out to either Sagar Bhanushali or Kunal Solanki for the same. Their details are available in the chat box now. We had the panel 1 in which we discussed geopolitical trends and travel risk management in the APAC region. And in that, the key points that were discussed was how it is important to have absolutely class A, top class people to safeguard critical infrastructure, how it is important to collaborate, and how being prepared for any kind of threats mitigates the risk, and despite the crisis, how it is positive. It is positive from the perspective of the industry, from the perspective of budgets, and especially for APAC because of the investments that are coming in. This was followed by a portal demo, and if you found it informative and if you would want to know more, please get in touch with us. You can contact Sagar Bhanushali for the same. His contact details are available, and we would be very happy to do a very detailed demo for you, explain each and every feature, and we also offer a 4-week complimentary trial. The panel 2 discussed new age threats to organizations, and here we discussed everything from upcoming cyber risk, supply chain risk, regulatory risk, compliance risk, and most importantly, the third-party vendor management risk. And what we did, the key takeaway was that risk will not go away, and we need to be relentless in our learning and have the right perspective. The panel 3 discussed technology risk outlook, and in this, the core was that we have to go back to our basics. Technology risks are here. It is constantly evolving. So although the risks remain, the risks are also evolving, but we need to go back to our basics and stay strong, have a strong foundation. And it all came back to people and how post-pandemic talent shortage and how the workforce has changed drastically. So these were the key takeaways. We would request you to we thank you and we request you to keep supporting us. Follow us on LinkedIn for more updates. We will be sharing a lot of information as far as the key takeaways from this events, and also information about all our upcoming events. Thank you so much. Thank you for staying with us, and back to you, Shreya.
Thanks, Aparna. With that, I would just like to say that at MitKat, it is our endeavor to bring together thought leaders, to share knowledge and the know-how of what everyone's doing in their sector, and with the idea that the community should grow together as a whole. And with that, I would just like to thank all the participants for their overwhelming support and encouragement towards MitKat. And it just makes us want to go bigger and better each time. And I'd like to thank all the panelists for making this successful. And we hope that the audience was able to get some great takeaway points from these sessions. Just a quick announcement and good news that all the participants will be receiving a certificate of participation for the seminar. And please stay in touch. Please log in and check our LinkedIn space for more information and more nuggets of thoughts coming from our leaders. And thank you very much. Hope you all have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you, everyone.